Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Every day spring brought new surprises, but these unexpected gifts pleased and filled the heart with some kind of anticipation of happiness. Sophia, too, felt a pleasant excitement, a warmth crumbling inside. Sliding the curtains open, she opened the window and soaked in the spring scents. The air rushed into the spaciousness of the kitchen. The woman put her face up to that same ceiling and whispered, "God, it felt good." It's not for nothing they say that spring awakens the desire to live. Sophia squared his shoulders. Romance, a useful thing, but not for me. And all because for me life has long ago acquired the format of duty. The woman put the kettle on the stove and headed for the refrigerator. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, and she froze for a second from surprise. Then she said very loudly to Greg, "You almost gave your mother a heart attack. You could have sounded the alarm." I'd forgotten I had tenants. Greg's face was still wandering. Shadows flashed in their dreams, and so he smiled stupidly. "Okay, Mom, I'm going to buy a doobie of the Children's World today. And every morning before leaving the room I will remind you that you are not alone in this apartment." The young man said the last phrase like an orator completing his morning speech with vivid facial expressions and gestures. Sophia shook her head disapprovingly. "Stop clowning around. You'll be 35 soon, and you're acting like a boy. You need to settle down." "Mom, it's a trait that almost all men have. I'm talking about a tendency to do childish things. But you women don't understand that such inappropriate behavior hides courage, willingness to sacrifice, and Sophia laughed. "I get it. Your oratorical skills are good, but your vocabulary is suffering. Let's wake up your half. We'll have breakfast. Kettle's almost ready. I just have to make the sandwiches." At that moment, the kettle sounded, and the woman rushed to the stove. She didn't see her son's face contorted in a grimace of confusion. There was a long pause, and the mother turned around. "Are we fighting again?" Greg waved his arms vigorously. "No, Mommy. Molly and I are doing just fine. It's just that my wife had a little accident, and you came in late, so I didn't bother you." Sophia carefully put the kettle on for comfort. "What kind of trouble are you talking about?" Greg nervously chuckled, which was clearly not in keeping with the nature of the message. "Molly had a sudden stomachache last night. Yes, so badly that she had to call an ambulance." The woman's face turned pale, and she sank to the edge of the stylish sofa that threatened the kitchen decor. "Tell me it's something serious. She didn't happen to be in a physician." Greg, I didn't expect such a reaction, and got really worried. "Mom, it's all right. We also at first thought that something female something, but this version immediately dropped out. So you can relax. There's nothing wrong with your sister-in-law. It's a simple appendix. She even had surgery." The mention of surgery only made Sophia's condition worse. She was panting and tears came to her eyes. "Did you call a hospital? Is it that serious?" "Mom, don't worry, don't worry. The danger is over. I was up early this morning, checking on my lovely wife's health. She was operated on at 300 hours, so don't blame me for being callous." I'm sweating with excitement. "You interrogated me like I was on trial. Mothers-in-law don't usually worry about their daughters-in-law." Greg exhaled with a sense of accomplishment and headed for the fridge. "So we have that to stress over." The mother beat her son to the table. "Sit down at the table. I'll do the cooking. I have to clean up after every time you go to the fridge." Greg didn't argue and sat down at the table. "Mom, I have such a vicious appetite, probably from nerves. I was really scared when Molly got sick. I'd never been in a situation like that before." Sophia gave her son a fleeting glance. "It was a situation like that. Greg, you just forgot." Greg felt himself being burned from the inside out. His mother's words sounded reproachful, a reminder of a long-standing family tragedy. To enter now into a bickering stand that without exaggeration depended on his future. His well-being he didn't want. So the best thing an adult son could do in the situation was to switch to another topic. Greg had often used this method in his childhood, and he was eager to use it now as well. "Mammy, I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, but I haven't had the chance. Maybe you could move in with us. It's hard to run a serious business away from civilization, and not quite convenient. We have a spacious apartment for 2 people with a lot of square meters. Soon the renovation will be finished, and it will be even cozier. So think about my proposal." Sophia figured out her son's maneuvers, but she also did not want to spoil her mood in the morning. She only noticed as a victim. "You think you're going to get your mother by turning the tables? It's not gonna work. I can guess your plans by your breath." The woman quickly cleared the dishes off the table. "I've been talking about moving for a long time. I'm quite comfortable in Castle Pines, and in modern conditions you can do business from anywhere in the world, even from the North Pole." Greg passed by, not forgetting to imprint a kiss on his mother's cheek. Already from the hallway, he shouted cheerfully, "Mom Molly in the second surgery in Ward 6. If you go, she'll bring slippers and a robe, and I'll drop by in the evening. Greg should probably bring something to eat." Greg reappeared in the cramped space of the anteroom as a humorist. The tenants themselves called the space between the hallway and the kitchen. "Mom, what are you doing? You can't eat at all after abdominal surgery. I think you can drink. You can't eat. All right, I'm off." After all, the son of the head of the company should be a role model. Sophia, as if remembering something important, made an expressive gesture. "Greg, hang on. This news about Molly's illness has completely knocked me off my game, and I forgot to warn you that from today, we will buy all consumables and fittings through a tender." "Okay, Mom. I ordered my lazy men to prepare the documents and inform the partners about the changes." The head of the company interrupted her son. "No, you take care of your direct duties, and this case I entrusted to someone else. Kevin has a wealth of experience and has a special nose for shoddy products." Greg was caught off guard because he didn't expect his mother to be so set up. An angry grimace contorted his face. "I get it. You don't have to explain. But you're counting my ego. You don't tell me that." In a burst of not-so-good feelings, the man kicked his indoor slippers, and they flew into the living room. Sophia came close to him and looked into his eyes. But it was no longer the warm gaze of a loving mother, but the cold gaze of a successful businesswoman. "You need to temper your ardor. Be thankful that I noticed the case with the past deliveries, which almost cost us our reputation." Greg instantly shrank back, and his shoulders slumped. His mother's authoritative voice as a child had suppressed his desire to resist. He couldn't forgive himself for this weakness, but he couldn't overcome it either. Sophia understood her son's state of mind. "I don't know, Greg, what prompted you to contact this dubious supplier, which is Cleopatra's firm. But I have no right to take risks. We're talking about dozens of people who work for a company that employs people with disabilities. We have a number of benefits, and I cannot allow myself or anyone else to cheat these people, to deprive them of their present and future. That's why I've made this decision. But you shouldn't take offense at me. It's best to learn from Kevin. He knows how to find an approach to even the most uncooperative partners." "Greg, Mom's boiling. Your Kevin's the biggest crook in the world, isn't he? There's no place to brand him." Sophia grinned. "Such people are called enterprising. They are very useful in business, and I strongly advise you to get Kevin's good attitude." "Mom, you're the one who just half an hour ago reminded me of my adulthood. I'm sorry, but I don't want to take lessons from your Kevin. What if he's such a great employee? It's time we put a bronze bust of him in front of our office in gold and right." The woman laughed. "Stop clowning around. I repeat, do not take offense at me. I'm doing this for your own good." Greg said nothing, but thought with irritation that his mother was again trying to create a harmonious duet. She had never spoken of him as an individual, and it was this fact that had once served to form a pile of complexes that still interfered with his life. The counterbalance used to be the half-sister, but now Molly has taken the place of the mother's favorite. The sprouts of his mother's jealousy of her own wife began to sprout in Greg's heart. Not long ago, the man realized that it would lead to nothing good, but he hadn't been able to suppress that stupid feeling yet. If Sophia had been told 5 years ago that the appearance of a provincial girl in her house would completely change her own life, she would not have believed in such statements, but further forced her mother-in-law to look at past events and current problems in a new way. The most positive moment for the mother was that the daughter-in-law taught her son to treat life with care. After all, Greg's bachelorhood had exceeded all permissible limits, and his mother often reproached him. "Greg, can't you find a nice girl? All you do is look and talk. That's how you get to gray hairs." My son was amused by such conversations, and he provoked his mother on purpose. "Mom, this image suits me fine. No obligations, you're only responsible for yourself. Life's a rush, but it's not normal. A grown man shouldn't be like a creature who is not responsible for anything." "Mom, that's your personal opinion. I have a different view, and I think it's the greatest folly for a man to voluntarily put a stigma around his neck. If you think like that, you'll be alone in your old age. Mom, you're my role model. You're single too, but I don't see any signs that you're suffering. Don't compare me to yourself. Besides, I've been married twice, as my grandmother used to say." Oh, by the way, my grandmother. Too bad you didn't get to see her. She knew all kinds of customs. She told me that in the old days they used to hang a heavy deck around their necks on Shrovetide. Greg was natively impressed by this custom. Medieval savagery. Everyone had their own opinion, but still this conversation influenced Greg, and he soon met a girl with whom he started a strong relationship. For almost 2 years, Greg and Cindy lived in a common-law marriage. Sophia hid from acquaintances that her son was cohabiting, but the young couple was not the least bit embarrassed. On the contrary, they liked free relations, and on occasion they tried to emphasize the advantages of such a union. Cindy said about it approximately as the world is changing, and a person must also fight with outdated stereotypes. Personally, I treat marriage as an unnecessary formality, although Sophia did not agree with this attitude. She tried not to interfere in the relations of the young. Cindy was from a good family, and at first she even made a positive impression on Greg's mother. But once during a frank conversation with the future mother-in-law, the girl revealed her essence, saying that the husband is a man who is obliged to fulfill any whim of his woman. Sophia was horrified by Cindy. What about love? After all, it is impossible to create something lasting without this feeling. The girl looked at her boyfriend's mother and calmly replied, "Love, carrots, and other tenderness. It's all utopia. No one needs a vestige. I told you that relations between people in modern society are now built on other principles, no matter how much the woman asked." Cindy couldn't name those principles. Sophia hoped in her heart that a union based on these incomprehensible norms would not last long. Her premonition was justified. One day, Greg came to her early in the morning and after a short greeting asked, "You won't mind if I stay with you for a week, will you?" Not a muscle in his mother's face quivered, although she guessed the reason for the sudden visit. The woman said very calmly that she might not have asked. "This is your home, and you can come here at any time of the day or night." The son hugged his mother in a burst of sincere feelings. How nice it is to have a person who understands everything without any unnecessary words. Sophia did not go into her son's soul and waited for him to tell her the reason for his separation from Cindy. "Mom, you won't believe it, but I've thought of you so often. I wanted to give it up so badly before, but I did. I don't know why I had to make such sacrifices. You can't build anything without patience, son. And for family life, that ability is essential. So why did you two split up?" "Mom, it's simple. In backyard parlance, I was elementary. Every day, she had a new dream. And for some reason, it was me who was chosen to fulfill those wishes. For a long time, I tried to convince myself that this was a temporary phenomenon. But then I realized that in the view of Laika, any man is a walking ATM or faker, able to make money out of thin air." Sophia's reasoning seemed sensible. She was even glad that her son decided to part with Cindy. The woman continued to believe that Greg would meet a girl with whom he could build a strong family. But after the separation from Cindy, the young man began to lead a dissolute life. He rented an apartment in the regional center, in which almost every day arranged noisy parties. The mother heard rumors about what the son does in his spare time, but she understood perfectly well that it was useless to reprimand a grown man. Only once she couldn't stand it and said with undisguised regret, "Greg, of course you're free to dispose of your life as you wish, but remember that one day there will come a moment when you will be, as a famous writer said, painfully hurt for the aimlessly lived days." Greg grinned wryly. "Mom, did you hit the mark? I've been feeling that way for a long time." "Then I don't understand why you don't try to change things." The young man sighed heavily. "It's easier to go with the flow, and I'm used to it." His son's frank confession shocked his mother, but she realized that she could not change his mind. The woman thought for a long time about how she could help Greg, and one day on a hunch, she went to the local temple. Sophia did not know any prayers and turned to the Mother of God with the words that were bursting from her heart. "The Queen of Heaven will intercede. Help my son. Nastasia him on the right path. I appeal to you as a loving mother worried about her child. Do not refuse your mercy." Sophia whispered the words of the prayer. Tears rolled from her eyes. An unfamiliar old woman watched her for a while, and then came closer. "Pray, my dear. Sincere words will be heard and will not go unanswered." The woman looked at the old woman, who reminded her of her long-dead grandmother. "Thank you." She leisurely walked from the church. She heart developed, pleasant grace, inner voice encouraging, and whispered, "Sophie, everything will be fine." And again she remembered her grandmother, who always used that form of her name. The woman considered it a sign from above, because the grandmother was a very religious person. The next day, Sophia again prayed in the temple in front of the images of yesterday's old woman and did not meet her again. Surprisingly, but visits to the place of spiritual solace became regular. And every time after prayer, the woman did not forget to leave some money for the needs of the temple. Perhaps her appeal was heard in heaven, or was it a coincidence? But Greg's life changed abruptly. One day, he arrived at Castle Pines unannounced, along with a petite blonde. In a solemn voice, he announced, "Mother, receiving guests. This is Molly through the walls." My fiancé Greg all glowed, and the mother realized that her son at this minute very happy. Molly looked at him with admiration, but was silent the whole time. Sophia was charmed by this lovely girl from the first minute. She began to fuss around her guest, trying to anticipate her every wish. "Molly, come in, make yourself at home." "Greg, what are you standing there for?" Greg was pleased that her mother was making such a big fuss over the girl. He expected a slightly different reception, and was very surprised by the warmth and even tenderness that flowed from his always strict mother. Having got a convenient moment, the young man whispered, "Mom, you do not recognize you today. You are on a roll." Sophia threw a reproachful look at her son. "How do you think I should behave to pounce on the girl with questions?" "No, Mom, keep it that way. I can see that my Molly is in shock. She's not used to this kind of attention." The guests really felt awkward the first night and acted very stiff. At every question, she blushed and lowered her eyes. So Sophia decided not to embarrass the girl and to postpone the clarification of biographical data to a more favorable time. After dinner, the son approached his mother and whispered in her ear, "Mom, if you can make a bed even in Kelly's room." The woman looked at her son with surprise. "Aren't you from your mom?" Molly was brought up in the old traditions, so to speak. She wants to take things step by step in our relationship. So you decided to play along. "No, Mom, it's not a game. It's more about not insulting someone I care about." Molly is an amazing creature. She's ethereal. I confess that it gives me great pleasure just to be near her, to look into her bottomless gray eyes. I think you've fallen in love for real. A mother's heart sing with happiness. Sophia, I really wanted this shy girl, who didn't have a single gram of makeup on her face, to really feel comfortable in their apartment. She herself walked her into a room that had been empty for almost 10 years. Settle them further and feel free to contact me if there are any difficulties. Suddenly, the girl snuggled up to her for a moment. Are you two so alike? The girl said it with such sadness that Sophia realized that there had been a tragedy in the family of her son's naming just recently. She was afraid of hurting the girl and did not question her, but even herself spoke briefly about a personal misfortune. Mom died last year. She was never sick. Even colds avoided her. And then she felt so bad she couldn't get out of bed. My sister and I thought she had an infection, so we called the doctor and he said it was very bad. I guess the fresh wound hadn't healed yet, and Molly's voice trembled. Sophia hugged her. If it hurts, try not to remember. The girl burst into tears on the chest of her future mother-in-law. I try not to think, but I can't. Mom is always in front of my eyes. Everything happened so fast. In just 2 months, the disease ate her up. It's been over a year now, and we still can't get over it. And Dad still can't believe Mom's gone. They loved each other very much. He says that for him life without Mom is meaningless now. Sophia sat the girl down on the bed and sat next to her. I too suffered a terrible blow many years ago. My youngest daughter was missing. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, even childishly. Yes, Greg told me about the accident, but not in detail. He and I have an unspoken pact not to bring it up. To be more precise, we're at odds about it, and we don't want to make things worse. Greg is certain that Kelly is dead. I know she's alive. A mother's heart can't be deceived. Molly clung to Sophia again. This is your daughter's room. Yes, everything's still here, like it was then, the last night before Kelly disappeared. Lie down, Molly. Let yourself have happy dreams. The woman didn't notice how she'd become more intimate. She kissed her son's friend as she had kissed her youngest daughter before bed. Greg was fiddling in the kitchen. Seeing the mother, he asked with a chuckle, "And what was the secret? Did you cure her?" "Nothing much." Sophia's gaze slid over her son's face and froze somewhere outside the window. "Greg, I'm not a superstitious person, but I don't think it's random. She looks so much like our Kelly." The son saw his mother on the verge of a breakdown, and in a heartbeat, Mom threw herself at him. "We had a deal." The woman smiled embarrassedly and crossed her arms over her chest. Yes, I remember. But it goes to my head. And she's almost that age. And that girl looks alike." Greg raised his voice. "There's no resemblance. Mom, are you trying to convince yourself of that? I thought things had settled down, and you're just stirring things up again." The young man spoke with obvious irritation. He nervously tapped his fingers on the capital, imitating natural stone. Had he known this would be the case and put off meeting Molly? The mother looked directly into her son's eyes, and that look made him wince, as did the woman's words. "Greg, I often catch myself thinking that you don't care at all about your sister. You talk about Kelly as if she were a piece of furniture, not a living person. And that's your sister. I'd hate to think you're so damn close." Greg realized he should say something, but his tongue felt like it was glued to his palate. Sophia looked at him one more time and went to her room. "Don't forget to turn off the kitchen light when you head to bed." The children stayed at Castle Pines for a week. Sophia became very attached to Molly during this time and was happy to tell her the secrets of her favorite homemade recipes. The two women developed a very close relationship almost immediately, which never faltered in 3 years. Molly, at any opportunity, boasted to friends and colleagues at work friendship with her mother-in-law. Sophia is an extraordinary woman. She destroys all the stereotypes that are attributed to mother-in-law. You may not believe me, but she replaced my mother. I'm very grateful to her for that. Representatives of the pessimist clan assured that such attachment is temporary, because any mother will always be on the side of her son. But Greg himself, too, was horrified to notice that his young wife was taking more and more possession of his precious mother's heart every day. The Central District Hospital in Castle Pines was a modern complex, packed with the most advanced equipment. But the main value of the hospital was its personnel. Immediately after its opening, not only medical graduates, but also doctors with rich practical experience rushed here. Every time passing by the hospital, Sophia thought if it had appeared in our city 10 years earlier, maybe my mom would still be alive. But as they say, fate cannot be ridden on a horse. And this very fate of a successful businesswoman was not easy. Sophia's childhood was really happy. She was the only child in the family, so the love of her parents and grandmother completely went to her alone. Anthony, the girl's father, worked as a foreman at a construction site. He told his daughter about the cities that would surely grow in the vast country. Sophia listened to her father with her mouth open, and then pelted him with her childish questions. "Daddy, when these cities appear, we will be given a big apartment." In those years, there was an acute shortage of normal housing. Most families stood in line for an apartment for decades, but there was little hope of getting their rightful square meters in their lifetime. So those citizens who had a little more money joined a cooperative. Anthony also decided to use this way of improving his living conditions. He once told his wife and daughter, "Girls, I've been thinking at my leisure and decided that we also need to do something about housing. How long can we stay in this room? Because there's been talk of cooperative housing in the family for a long time." Betty immediately objected. "Anthony, you said yourself that the cooperative is an eternal bondage. We'll be paying for it all our lives." The man looked at his wife enigmatically. "It's okay. We'll get by. I was offered a good position here, which means that I will receive almost twice as much." The woman wouldn't give up. "Anthony, what if something happened to you? God forbid. What are we gonna do then? I don't think we should rush. The crew is moving forward, and in 5 years we'll get an apartment." "Betty, I'm not dreaming. You know very well that it's an almost unattainable goal to get public housing, and 5 years is not 5 years. We'll live in a dormitory until the end of our lives and grow old in this room among the mold-covered walls." The woman wouldn't give up. "We could live at my mom's house." "It's not like that. I've offered you many times, but you're as stubborn as a donkey." Sophia watched the argument between her parents, and at the very moment when her mother mentioned the willful animal, she resolutely took her father's side. "Mom, you said we shouldn't call names. You yourself called Daddy a bad word. I also think we should buy an apartment." The 5-year-old girl so colorfully expressed her opinion that her parents could not resist laughing. When the fit of hilarity passed, Anthony, nodding at his daughter, said to his wife, "And see, Betty, Sophia herself decided everything for us. By the way, contrary to your Philistine beliefs, getting into a cooperative today is not so easy. People have money, and many want to invest their savings in housing." The woman asked with undisguised snideness, "Wondering how you will get in?" The man smiled, "And as a worker in the construction industry, I am entitled to benefits. We're already on the list, and now we have until the end of the month to make the first installment." Betty shook her hands. "Anthony, where are we going to get that kind of money? I wonder what you were thinking when you decided to take this gamble." The man shouted smugly without panic, "We have the money. We'll take it from the amount set aside to buy Anthony's car. But our turn is coming up, and if we get out of line now, we'll have to get in again." Sophia saw that her mother was ready to cry and started to calm her down. "Mommy, don't cry. We'll buy a car later." "Really, Daddy?" The woman looked at her daughter, then at her husband. "Yes, you're conspiring against me. Do what you want, but only then blame yourselves." Anthony gave his face a serious expression. "All Betty. No more tears and recriminations. Let's consider this matter closed. As the head of our small family, I believe that for us today is more important than an apartment, a car. Unfortunately, in our country, personal transportation is still a luxury, not a means of rapid movement." Because the score was not in her favor, Betty had to give up and say goodbye until better times to the dream of buying her own car. But long after the momentous conversation with her husband, she often helped out in the kitchen. Everyone will get free public housing by the year 2000, and we will pay. An act worthy of idiots. Of course, Anthony knew about his wife's sentiments, but pretended not to notice it. And soon Betty herself got used to the idea that they would live in a cooperative apartment and would have to pay for all the fun out of their own pockets. In less than 2 years, the 9-story high-rise was completed, and the family moved into a spacious 3-room apartment. Betty couldn't believe her happiness. My God, here, and the stove, and imported in the bathroom, all to the movie maid. She liked the fancy wallpaper, but what really delighted the woman was the presence of the Anthony Loggia. This is where you can store all the things you can't bear to throw away. The man held up his index finger in mourning. I have to disappoint you, because storing junk is not. By the way, it is considered a violation, and the owners risk a hefty fine. While the parents were arguing about where and what to store in the apartment, Sophia silently surveyed the new space. The girl was amazed by the spaciousness, but what shocked her the most was having her own room. It took her several years to get used to the new conditions, so moving into a new apartment took a central place in Sophia's life. This event became a kind of starting point for all the changes that took place afterwards. But the happiness of the Belsky family was short-lived. When Sophia entered the 7th grade, Anthony was seriously injured at work. For several months, the man lay bedridden in the hospital. In those days, Castle Pines residents were treated in an old building that was in need of major repairs. The conditions there were therefore appalling. Betty stayed with her husband around the clock, and it was only through her efforts that the man regained partial ability to move. Of course, after such a serious injury, it was out of the question to return to the previous place of work. The family hoped that the victim would receive at least some compensation for the damage to his health. But the construction organization, where Anthony worked, refused to admit that the accident occurred because of the negligent attitude to the safety of workers. The management shifted all the blame on the shoulders of the victim. Litigation began, which the man took very hard. He became angry and irritable and began to drink frequently. Betty tried to talk some sense into Anthony. You said yourself that hardship hardens a man, and you gave up without a fight. Betty, look at me. I'm not much of a fighter. I can barely move around the apartment. I don't get much in disability. What the hell kind of toughness is that? It's time to get drunk and forget. Arguments like this happened almost daily. As time went on, so did the financial difficulties. Betty worked her ass off at work. But her meager salary was not even enough for a modest meal, let alone other expenses. One day, she started an uncomfortable conversation. My dears, I've been thinking a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that this apartment is a great luxury for us. Sophia was terrified. Mom, what do you want? Back to the dorm. Why go to such extremes? We can move in with Grandma for a while. No, I won't live in a hut on chicken legs. And how will Daddy be in such conditions? Granny has everything outside, toilet and water. Betty mumbled confusedly. I hadn't thought of that. But there's another option, to exchange our apartment for a smaller one. Anthony had been silent up to that point, but when his wife brought up the exchange, he confidently told Betty to stop. There's not much left to pay off. The woman screamed hysterically at Anthony. We don't have enough to eat, and you keep telling us to wait. If this keeps up, we're gonna die. Betty, don't yell. I'll figure something out, but don't be in a hurry to sell the apartment. Mark my word, that soon will begin such processes that their own home will be the highest measure of security. I was not surprised by such a long monologue of my father, because his disability made him sullen and not talkative. Many times the man made attempts to find a use for his strength, but everything turned out to be a failure. To get out of his chronic lack of money, Betty worked double shifts. The woman would come home and collapse from exhaustion. I don't know how much strength I have left. My life doesn't feel like a normal race. I've seen a motorcyclist at the circus run up the wall. If he suddenly slows down, he'll fall off and get smashed to bits. I feel like I'm in the shoes of such a motorcyclist. Sophia did not pay much attention to such reasoning of her mother, but tried to ease the plight of her parents and often helped her after school in the sewing shop, where Betty had been working for many years, sewing blankets and bed linen. Sophia quickly mastered the technique and often sat behind the car instead of her mother. The women were murmuring behind her back, "Good girl, she's helping her mother, just as long as she doesn't get caught by the bosses." But someone must have snitched. Called Sophia. And the shop steward caught Sophia in the act one day. She hurled insults at her mother. "Betty, what are you doing? You haven't been yourself lately, and I have a suspicion. Have you been drinking with your crippled husband?" Such a statement sounded insulting. But the mother kept silent, lowered her eyes, and clutched her daughter's hand tightly. By this, she made Sophia realize that she should keep silent and bear it. And Sophia at first obeyed her mother's wish, but then she decided to be cunning. She put a subservient smile on her face and turned to the forewoman. "Evelyn, don't scold Mom. It's my fault. I talked her into it. You know I'd love to work for you. I love it here. I'm in awe of machines that do their own work." Sophia was praising the production at every turn, and the boss looked at her, pulling her eyes out. When the girl stopped, Evelyn said with heartfelt awe, "Good girl, we need people like that. You can come when you have free time and desire to learn a profession. And after graduation, I promise you employment." Of course, Sophia didn't earn any money, but her mother received monthly bonuses. So with Sophia's help, the family regained a more or less stable position. And soon Anthony himself, not without the help of friends, found a job. All the years of being on disability, the man practiced hard, and such diligence yielded results. Anthony began to walk a little with the help of a cane. Before that, he moved on crutches and sometimes used a wheelchair. One day, his father came home and happily announced that the girls were hiring me. Betty was surprised. "Who's got the hots for you? They recommended me to a company to guard a warehouse. Work doesn't beat lying down." In honor of such an event, Betty even decided to organize a party in the house. In the evening, when the guests went home, she raised her eyes to the ceiling and quietly said to her daughter Sunny, "God must have heard my prayers. Maybe he'll give us at least a quiet life." Anthony only worked for a couple months. One morning, he didn't come back from duty. On her mother's orders, Sophia ran to the warehouses to see if her father was drinking with his friends again. But the old lady girl found already cocknut father's body. Doctors then said that death came instantly because some vessel exploded. It was a terrible blow, and Betty couldn't take it this time. Working for their pestilence and the death of her husband became a fertile ground for the development of diabetes mellitus. The disease proceeded in a severe form, and by the age of 50, the woman was almost blind. Sophia's grandmother liked to repeat, "If trouble came from the yard and the gate," and prepare to take a lot of misfortunes. As a child, she did not realize the true meaning of this proverb. Only left alone with a pile of problems and a sick mother, the girl felt the meaning of this common phrase. If earlier she still allowed herself to dream about the future, about studying at an institute or at least a professional college, then after the death of her father, all hopes collapsed. Sophia even had to give up the graduation party at school because she had nothing to buy a decent dress and shoes with. The girl received her diploma and the next day went to the garment factory where her mother used to work. Evelyn met her kindly. "Our gold Sophia, how nice to see you. Are you just checking up on us, or are you here on business?" The girl Lipatova on business Evelyn and briefly recounted the essence of her problem. The head of the workshop invited her to her office. "Come, let's talk, because it's too noisy here and there are a lot of extra ears." The last remark the woman made was not in vain. Sophia noticed that her appearance had aroused a lot of interest in the female staff. She followed Evelyn into a small room with a single window. The lady of the room got right down to business. "Of course I'll help you, because your mother has done so much for our enterprise. But I must warn you that perhaps our shop will soon be closed down or sold. There are such talks, but nothing can be fixed, because nobody needs unprofitable enterprises. This is the oil picture. So if you have other options, it is better not to take risks. But Sophia had no such options, and she stayed at the factory until the very end of the existence of this once successful production. They closed the factory just before Christmas, paying the workers a small compensation. Sophia didn't know how to tell her mother that she was out of work, but Betty understood. "Sophia, don't cry. I've known for a long time that our office would be shut down one day. It was coming. Don't despair. We're not going down with you. We'll sell Grandma's house. There are buyers already. We'll see what happens." The money from the sale of this old house in the suburbs was not enough for long, and Castle Pines was in a time of chronic unemployment. Sophia ran for temporary part-time jobs, but the situation was getting worse by the day. Once again, a mother helped with advice. The daughter will allow Evelyn too. She is kind, always helped everyone, and swore only to maintain authority. Sophia was surprised. "I wonder, and how your former boss will help us." "Oh, you. I'm sick to my stomach. I spend most of my time in my apartment, sitting by the window, and I can still keep up with the events in the country. Haven't you heard that everyone's rushing into cooperatives now? It's a time when you have to seize the moment. A lot of people I know have gone into commerce. What can I say? Strange things are happening around here. Not so long ago, they were kicking out drug dealers and even gave them jail sentences. But now you can freely sell whatever you want." The girl listened to her mother, but didn't understand what she was getting at. "Mom, what does this have to do with your Evelyn?" "Because she's had a career change too. Now she goes to Poland or something and brings back fancy things. Talk to her, see if she'd be willing to help." Sophia found the former head of the sewing factory at the market, but the girl did not immediately recognize in the broken but brightly painted saleswoman always pull up Evelyn. She was the first to call out to her. "Sophia, hi. Where you headed? You looking to buy something? Or are you looking for someone?" The girl said, "I'm looking for you, Evelyn." There's a problem with the tone again. A note of concern could be heard in the woman's voice, and Sophia felt uncomfortable. But it was too late to retreat, and she, with a vacantly cheerful net, informed an old acquaintance. "Yes, there is such a thing. I apologize for daring to bother you, but there's no one else to turn to. My mom and I were left with a broken home. We had to sell Grandma's house for next to nothing. But the money was barely enough for a year. There's no work in town, and I can't leave my mom alone. Maybe you can tell me where I can get a job." Evelyn gave the girl an appraising look. "You know what, baby, come to me as my assistant. I'm not really comfortable with the goods, and then stand here. My system is well organized, so there won't be any problems." Sophia, not listening to her benefactor, did not agree. "I'm fine with it. I will do whatever you say." Evelyn shook her head. "You didn't even ask about the salary. That's the most important thing in this business. I don't care, as long as I have enough for my bread. There's enough for bread and even butter and sausage. If you obey me, I'll pay you by the piece. That is, it depends on sales." Since Sophia did not yet have the necessary life experience, she did not go into the intricacies of entrepreneurship. That same day, she and a group of local officials went to Denver to pick up the goods. Before the trip, Evelyn gave Sophia detailed instructions while keeping an eye on the intern, and instructed the driver to make sure there were no hiccups anywhere, and helped the girls. The handsome brunette and threw Sophia a searing glance in her direction. "Don't worry, Evelyn. I promise everything will be all right." The young man was the owner of the name Leo. He had immediately set his eyes on the pretty assistant of the hostess and entertained her with incredible stories all the way. Sophia did not enjoy the attention of guys at school, so she looked at Leo as a down-to-earth deity. Of course, that first day, she couldn't even guess how her infatuation would end. The young man had helped her stock up on supplies and then loaded the bags into the car himself. To learn. With envy watched this scene, one woman did not hold back. "How touching. It reminds me of my youth. Sophia, don't miss out on such a prominent beau." It's rare to find such nice guys these days. The girl is not used to such remarks, and blushed. This moment did not escape Leo. Without paying attention to them, these ladies have been through fire and water. They will still say so much that you will get tired of being surprised. Indeed, all the way back the women told jokes. And at the end, they started telling obscene stories. Sophia did not have to be in such company. And she blushed. Then pale Leo paid absolutely no attention to the obscene talk of the goods and only occasionally winked at the girl. Evelyn was pleased with the assortment of goods Sophia had brought. "You're a good girl. Do you have a sense of taste? These people are ready to give everything they have in their wallets for imported rags. That's why the main rule in our business is to please the customer." Sophia caught everything her mistress said on the fly. The girl quickly mastered the peculiarities of market trading, and Evelyn encouraged her to sell even non-liquid goods. The efforts of the novice merchant were positively reflected in the household. The refrigerator was once again stocked with quality products, and Betty was able to receive full treatment. There were changes in Sophia's personal life as well. The joint trips brought the girl closer to Leo, and she accepted his advances with undisguised pleasure. The hostess also noticed that her driver did not leave her assistant. Guided by the best intentions, Evelyn decided to hurry up the young man. "Leo, you're acting like an inexperienced boy. Women like determined men. If you walk like a bull and moo, she'll sleepily find another beau." This advice was given publicly, right in the marketplace. Frill-seeking commodities broke up with laughter, and the couple in love did not know where to escape from the attention of everyone. Apparently, in retaliation to the women or because of the desire to prove that he is a real man, immediately without leaving the counter, made Sophia an offer. Quite original in form. "Why, Sophia? Marry me. We'll improve the country's demographics together. I don't promise golden mountains, but you won't get bored with me." The humorous tone and inappropriate situation did not embarrass the girl. She immediately agreed to marry a man she knew almost nothing about. Sophia was shocked when her daughter told her the news. "Sophia, you can't do that. Marriage is a serious step in every woman's life. You don't know anything about it, Leo." Sophia didn't expect such a reaction from her mother. She started to calm her down. "Helen's mom is very nice. He doesn't even smoke and does sports, and I think I love him." Betty cried. "She thinks you're not even sure how you feel. How are you going to live your life? Without me, you'll be lost." And then Betty said with childlike naivete, "Mom, I'm not going anywhere. We have a big apartment. Helen's renting a room from an old lady, and you don't mind if he moves in with us." Betty reluctantly agreed to a shared living arrangement, but she'd disliked her son-in-law from day one. But he returned the favor, so Sophia often had to play the role of referee during the verbal fights that often took place in the kitchen. One day, when her son-in-law was not at home, Betty said to her daughter Sophia, "Can't you see that your husband isn't who he says he is? It's written all over his face, and I know in my heart that your marriage is going to end." Sadly, the girl has a grudge against her mother. "Thank you, Mommy, for your good wishes. You're used to thinking only about yourself. That's why you don't like everything I do." After this exchange of revelations, the daughter and mother stopped talking for a long time. Betty thought out a bit. It wasn't until Greg was born that the little grandson became the meaning of life for the sick woman. He, too, rejoiced at the birth of his son and made grand plans for the future. In an optimistic stroke, he promised his wife Sophia, "We will soon live like they show in the movies. We will build a 2-story house with a swimming pool, buy a luxury car. She will go to an elite school." Sophia wanted to believe in these bright prospects, but these plans were not destined to come true, because Leo got involved in a dirty story. Sophia remembered that winter day when masked men burst into their apartment and dragged her husband out of bed. The little son was screaming in fright, and the law enforcers, ignoring the children's cries, laid her husband face down on the floor and twisted his hands behind his back. The young woman instinctively rushed to the aid of her beloved with a shout, "What are you doing? You are treating him for the time being." but one of the aliens roughly pushed her away. Sophia hit her head painfully against the wall, so she could not hear well how her husband promised her Sophia in parting. "I will definitely come back. You just wait for me." Neighbors watched from the windows as men in camouflage led them Helen with the long back arms to the car. A few days later, rumors spread through the neighborhood that Sophia's husband was involved in the death of a prominent businessman. Acquaintances began to avoid Betty and Sophia, and friends and distant relatives stopped answering their calls. Even Evelyn, embarrassed, once said, "You realize that this is a rather delicate situation. You can't go against public opinion. So you and I are going to have to part ways. There's too much at stake, and I can't risk my reputation. Besides, I'm going to buy a little store in the region." The landlady paid the girl a substantial compensation and made it clear that all relations between them. From that moment on, all relations between them were terminated. Later, Sophia learned that Evelyn had become the owner of a chain of stores selling branded clothes. Helen was given 10 years in a strict regime colony. The young woman did not want to hear about this person anymore and changed her surname to her maiden name. The housing cooperative also had to make new documents. Only the patronymic was left from the native father. Public opinion affected the life of the young woman. She unsuccessfully searched for a permanent job, contenting herself with casual earnings, but the heaviest blow was the death of her mother. Betty's condition deteriorated sharply and required expensive medicines, for which the daughter had no money. Black clouds again thickened over the head of the young woman, and she no longer believed that the sun would again smile on her bright streets. Man is an amazing creature. He gets used to even the most unbearable conditions of life. Sophia, too, quickly got used to her new status, and against reasonable logic, she even managed to use this unfavorable circumstance to her advantage. After all, she had to survive not only on her own, but also to raise her son, and that required money. And she didn't have any. There was no one to consult with, and the woman was in total despair. One day, she went straight to the city administration. The officials were surprised by the visit of such an ambiguous person, but no one wanted to take responsibility. Sophia was now running around the offices until she realized that it would do nothing. She was ready to give up and go home with nothing, when an inner voice quietly whispered to her, "Sophia, go to the mayor himself, otherwise nothing will work." The woman timidly opened the reception door, but the receptionist looked at her menacingly. "You have to make an appointment to see the mayor." Sophia asked then to make an appointment for me. The receptionist pierced her again with an unfriendly look. "What's the job for?" "I can't find a job. And I have a young son. Everybody has kids, and William is very busy. He can't deal with every single mom separately. Go to the deputy. Or do you want to go to social services?" "Yeah, I've already been to all the offices." The secretary even got up from her spinning wheel in indignation. "Vasia is a chairwoman. Don't yell here. I told you to go to the deputy. It's just next door across from the reception area." But Sophia did not follow the secretary's advice. It was lunchtime, and the woman and her young son were sitting in a corner near the reception area. Greg was enthusiastically engaged in his car, whose wheels kept falling off, so it could not move. The boy rattled the wheels under his nose with the tenacity of a donkey and then tested the toy. Sophia watched her son, and her heart fluttered with pity for the child. "And what, son? There will be a holiday on our street. And then I'll buy you a bicycle and a bunch of different cars." The boy distracted from his occupation. "Mom, it will be soon." The woman did not have time to answer, because at that moment a whole group of people appeared in the corridor. Greg exhaled with admiration. "Wow. Mom, look what cool pictures they have." The son called the professional cameras that were in the hands of 2 men from this group. The woman did not have time to think about the purpose for which she had come to the administration of this delegation, as the door of the reception room opened sharply and the mayor, flashing a flawless smile, came out to the guests. "Come in. It is a pleasure to have our humble Castle Pines honored with media attention." A hunch flashed through Sophia's mind. It was the television crew. What happened next was spontaneous. The young mother had not expected herself to be so bold. She jumped out of her hiding place, interrupting the exchange of pleasantries between the mayor and the media. "William, you're the only one who can help me." The mayor's eyes went beyond orbits, and his two aides tried to push back the insolent. "Excuse me, hospital," but cameras were clicking on all sides. And a cheerful male voice pronounced, "Today, when democratic principles have become the norm of everyday life, representatives of local authorities try to be closer to the people." The mayor of small Castle Pines is no stranger to the aspirations of ordinary people who can ask for help at any time. Our film crew was lucky because we witnessed such an action. Good mercy. This is a young resident of the city, appealed to the mayor of William. After all, someone slipped the microphone. Sophia card, and then a cheerful voice asked, "Tell me, what brings you to the city administration today?" Sophia felt how bad. That pushes up to her throat. Dozens of eyes stared at her uninterruptedly, and the cameras made an unpleasant beeping sound. The mayor was expecting a response too, but his look didn't bode well. Behind him, someone whispered in a panic, "Woman, don't be silent. Say something." Unexpectedly, Greg answered for his mother. The boy stretched out his hand to the microphone and loudly announced that my mother and I had come from work. My grandmother died, and my dad went somewhere else. This answer of the child caused indescribable delight among those present. Even the head of the administration smiled, and the young reporter jumped up to Sophia and whispered to the cameraman, "Take a close-up of the boys." He then asked a few simple questions to the kid, and I didn't even stumble once while answering. Everyone looked at the boy with emotion. Then the microphone was passed to the mayor, and he confidently promised a solution to the citizens' issue. "I will take it under my personal control. The administration of Castle Pines will try to do everything possible to eliminate the existing problem. After all, the main task of the authorities is to improve the lives of ordinary people. And that's why we try to understand the problems of every citizen." The young reporter was happy to pick up on it, and we will follow the development of events. Sophia could not come to her senses for a long time, despite the fact that the cameras were already turned off. The aides escorted the woman and child to the mayor's office, and the head of the district smiled kindly at the woman. "Well, Sophia, you've caused quite a stir in our sleepy little town, but I have to say, your impromptu speech was a great success, although I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet. But I can tell you, you were definitely in the right place at the right time tonight. To be honest, I was stunned by your sudden exit, and your little boy deserves a special commendation. Well done. He's a little boy, but he's already standing up for his mom. Give me your 5. Greg extended his hand to the mayor. At that moment, for the first time in his life, he felt important and proud of what he had done. The mayor once again promised the young mom to get her a job. On the same day in the evening, a report with their participation was shown on TV. Not even 10 minutes after the news, the home phone began to ring. The most surprising thing was that the first to remind of themselves were those who had not so long ago denied her friendship. But the main events awaited Sophia ahead. The next morning at exactly 9 o'clock, she received a call from the administration and was asked to come urgently to the office of the deputy mayor. The official met the woman with a smile on duty. "We discussed all the options with William yesterday. How do you feel about business?" This direct question should have caused the woman confusion, but she immediately answered positively. "I helped my landlady at one time, but she left Castle Pines for the regional center. She has a chain of stores there." The official happily interrupted the visitor. "You see, as they say, desire and labor will overcome everything. Moreover, you have experience, but I have no education. Education is something that comes with the job. Today, everyone studies by correspondence, and there is nothing to prevent you from following this example. The deputy mayor talked a lot about the prospects of life in his native Castle Pines, and at the very end of his speech offered the single mom to join the ranks of local entrepreneurs. The sewing shop where you used to work has been idle for several years. Soon there will be an auction, and the enterprise will go under the hammer. I admit that the administration has tried many times to find a good owner, but we have no luck with the buyer. No one can withstand even the insurance period. They think that investments in this enterprise will not justify themselves. Of course, there are difficulties, but you can't do without them in any business. A good owner or hostess will be able to find the key to the lock with a secret. Sophia realized that the deputy mayor was talking about her as a future business owner. She exclaimed in despair, "But I can't do it. And then I don't have any money." The official rubbed his hands together. "You can do it, and we'll help you. Especially since the case has gotten a lot of publicity. And now the TV crews won't be able to get away from us. I'm sure it won't be a week. How will you get voluntary sponsors? That's the kind of people we have in this country. They will give their last ruble for a good cause." The deputy mayor turned out to be right, and the young entrepreneur dared to start from scratch. They began to write articles about their business. Several times Sophia was invited to television. Patrons of the arts were also active, willing to help the enterprising woman. Max was among the voluntary helpers. Sophia always remembered her second husband with awe. But Greg, unlike his mother, even after many years thought of the workers with hatred. The morning talk had awakened these unpleasant feelings in his soul, and he showed up at the office already on edge. Wanting to put his thoughts in order a little, he headed for his office. But no sooner had Greg opened the door than he heard the cheerful voice of Kevin. "Greg, are you late today? I've been waiting for you." The last thing he wanted to do now was to listen to the head of the supply department. So Greg made a short arrangement. "My wife got sick last night and was taken to the hospital by ambulance." Kevin's face changed. "And what happened to your wife? If it's a secret, you don't have to tell me. I realize you can't tell me everything about family matters. There's nothing secret. Molly never complained of appendicitis, and then suddenly it kicked in. Sophia must have gone to visit her sister-in-law this morning. That's why I see she's late. Greg, you have an extraordinary mom. Are you lucky to have her?" Greg wrinkled his nose. "Kevin, I know all about my mother. If it's a matter of business, why did you just let your thorns out? Did I step on your tail? Kevin, let's not turn my office into a place for unnecessary discussion." Kevin took offense, as evidenced by his flaring ears and unkind eyes. He said emphatically formally, "All right, Greg, let's switch to the business language of communication. If you are not already aware of it, I have to inform you that Sophia has instructed our department to buy materials and fittings." Greg impatiently interrupted. "I am aware of that. If that's all you wanted to tell me, I dare not detain you any longer." Kevin minted separately, every syllable. "You're wasting your breath, Greg. To me it's a very narrow neck, and not everyone can get out." "Greg Boyle, are you threatening me?" "God forbid. Absolutely not. As a delicate man, I just want to draw your attention to one very important point. You don't shit where you feed." The last words Kevin said, clearly alluding to his failed deal. "I warned you it was dangerous to mess with Cleopatra. And you didn't believe Uncle Kevin. Be thankful your mother doesn't know you're being arbitrary. I am a deeply decent man and do not engage in whistleblowing." Greg felt cold sweat rolling down his back in large data. Barely audible, he whispered, "Thank you, Konstantinovich." Kevin headed for the exit, but the very doors turned around Greg. "Do you want some ethical advice? Keep it simple, and people will be attracted to you." Kevin closed the door behind him, and Greg sat down in the chair, leaving his head back. "What day is it? Molly gave out a number tonight. Then my mom surprised me. And now Kevin's trying to teach me about life. How much does he look like my dead stepfather?" The wheel of memory has turned again this morning and taken a turn back in time. And, as the song goes, Greg took a trip down the waves of his memory. In his 80s, Greg perceived everything that happened in the most vivid colors. It's adults who can color life in halftones. But children are clear, day and night. Friend or foe. Max bursts into their lives, suddenly disrupting the order of the house. Yes, his appearance only entitled him to his mother's attention and love. So the boy's first reaction was indignation. Then he did not realize that his mother had decided on this important step not immediately. Most likely, she had been seeing Max for some time, but she did not dare to invite him home. It was late fall when Sophia told her son, "We'll have a guest today. What do you think about it?" Greg looked at his mother with a sidelong glance and muttered, "I don't think so. Why do we need a guest?" The mother was confused and began to explain that people should socialize because it's boring to be alone. The son looked at her and kept wrinkling his nose. "Mom, I know all about friendship and good relationships, but I think that we are very good together. But if you want more friends, you can invite them over. Just don't make me smile and say anything stupid." "Sophia," laughed Greg. "What do you think?" My boy didn't understand the meaning of the word and remained silent. Only at dinner he asked who your guest was. The woman had been waiting for this question and answered readily. "Have you seen him before?" "Once. Remember, when we bought the factory, different people came and offered to help us. I remember that day very well, because one of the sponsors gave him a game console. True, it quickly broke down. Recalls that moment. It was nice. This is the man who gave me the toy." "No, son. That man gave us some cars. They were used, but they were in good working order. His name is Max." The boy asked with feigned bewilderment. "What?" "A sewing machine." Greg came in, and with laughter, and the mother waited for the fit of hilarity to pass. "Son, I'm talking to you seriously, and you're a fool, studying." "Okay, Mom, I won't laugh anymore. Just promise me that you won't marry this Max." Sophia obviously didn't expect such an ultimatum from her son. "Greg, are you too young to give me conditions?" The boy parried, "But I have rights too. I don't want some uncle living in our house and you making me call him father. Guys in our class told me that about their stepfather's V." The boy went into a hysterical screaming fit and hid in his room. Sophia, for fear of hurting the child's wounded psyche, changed her plans. She knocked on her son's room when he opened the door and said, "Calm down. We won't have guests today. Where will you go on a date?" "I'll come with that Max." "You guessed it." The woman hugged her son and kissed him on the top of his head. "Zhika, don't be so mean. You choose your own friends at school. Notice that I do not interfere in this process at all. Let me make my own choices." When his mother went to live, he felt so sad that he almost declared. He barely waited for his mother to return and right in the hallway expressed his final decision. "Mom, let this your Max comes to us. Then I am very bad alone without you." Max won the heart of the boy that from the first meeting, he did not start to pussyfoot with him, and spoke like an adult, although his mother also always took into account his opinion. But Mom is a woman, and Max is a grown man, and he is, as the boys at school used to say. Very quickly, Greg became friends with his stepfather. Max drove him in his car to the zoo where the animals lived. He even let the boy sit behind the wheel of his car a few times. There were many more things that his classmates went in with envy of the farmer. Sophia was glad that her men had found common ground. One day she told her son, "Now, we have a real family." "You like that, Greg," Uncle Max admitted to the ladies. "He's really nice. He's fun to be with. He told me so many things. He also promised to take me night fishing." "Mom, I'll catch a bream like that, or even by myself." The boy showed with his hands the size of the fish he promised to catch. One day, he himself asked his stepfather, "Can I call you father?" Max had been waiting for this question for a long time and could not hide his excitement. "Of course, son, call me father or father. What do you prefer?" But the period of family idyll didn't last long. Greg began to notice that his mother was very fulfilled. With childlike candor, he said, "You need to work out. You'll soon become quite fat. like our Wendy, a math teacher who really had very lush forms. And this comparison made Sophia smile. No, I won't be like that, because it's a temporary fullness. The boy stared at his mother in bewilderment. Is there such a thing? It does. I was so fat once before. And then you were born, and I lost weight immediately. Greg was at an age when he knew how babies came to be. So his mother's confession came as a shock to him. He looked at her smiling face, and indignation rose in his heart, which burst out with a scream. You're going to have a baby, but I don't want one. The boy was beating hysterically. Sophia could not calm him. The unhappy woman could not have imagined that her son would take the news so violently. She tried to convince him that he would have a brother or sister and that he would have more fun. The mother did not realize at that time that her son did not want to share her with anyone. He hardly accepted Max only because this person fulfilled his desires, that is, brought a certain benefit. And what benefit could there be in having another child? Greg refused to understand. Sophia hoped that everything would settle down when the baby came into the world, but she was wrong when the tiny lump in a pink envelope was brought home. Her newfound brother wrinkled his nose squeamishly. She stinks. I don't even want to go near her. Time passed, but the boy never gave up his position. Kelly was growing up, and her happy parents rejoiced at her successes, but in Greg's heart, hatred blossomed. He hated his mother for betraying him, hated his stepfather for not being a real father to him, but he hated his little sister the most. Max was the first to notice that there was something wrong in their family. Greg always kept his ear to the ground and often eavesdropped on adult conversations to make sure he didn't miss anything important. He heard his stepfather reprimanding his mother in the kitchen. Sophia, something has to be done about this. It's not normal. The guy's really burning with hate. The mother tried to stand up for her son. Max, I think you're losing it. He's going through puberty, so he's showing his temper. Sophia, but I've seen with my own eyes how much hatred he looks at Kelly. I've been alarmed before by some things that I didn't pay much attention to. Frankly, I fear for our daughter. Please talk to your son. Maybe he'll listen to you. We had a serious conversation that same evening, but Greg descended into rudeness from the first second. Yeah, screw Kelly. Do you even like her? Don't touch me. Not until you graduate, and you won't see me at all. That was the cry of a spoiled egomaniac soul. It was only at that moment that Sophia realized that in 16 years she had never gotten to know her son. As promised, Greg disappeared from home after receiving his diploma. He didn't even come on vacation because he didn't want to meet his sister. And then the woman accidentally learned that her son had somehow miraculously found Leo. This news stunned her, and she herself went to the city where her son studied. But Greg wouldn't even listen to his mother. Mom, you're too late with your instructions. I'm all grown up now, and I'll decide for myself what to do and who to talk to. But I promise I won't bother you, and I'm not going to give up my own father just because something bad happened between you two a long time ago. For a few years, the guy really didn't show up, only called his mother occasionally. But communication with his own father changed his outlook on life. Now Greg recalled with horror how he decided to take revenge. And this action he had decided to coincide with his half-sister's coming of age. The unhappy memories, even more than the conversations with Kevin, spoiled Greg's mood to find some equilibrium. He ventured to deal with his wife's medical condition. Sophia disliked hospitals because medical facilities conjured up unpleasant associations for her. After all, she had spent many days and nights with her mother at the bedside of her paralyzed father. For 24 hours a day, she did not leave her dying mother's side. Therefore, the mere thought that she would have to cross the threshold of the hospital caused panic terror in the woman's soul. Probably, this fear was reflected on her face when she asked the post nurse, "I'm here to see Molly." She's a postdoc girl who looked anxiously at the visitor. "Don't worry, your Molly is fine. She's in Ward 6, probably already awake from the anesthesia." Sophia threw a white robe on her shoulders and, trying not to make noise, walked down the corridor near the ward where her sister-in-law was lying. She stopped and knocked for some reason. Someone shouted loudly, "Come in. I'm sorry we can't meet." The cheerful voice belonged to a girl who was lying by the window with an open book. In total, there were 4 people in the ward, and Sophia did not immediately find Molly. She turned to the very girl who had invited her. "Where is she till now?" "At the very door. There are no others yet." Molly spoke up. "You can't argue with that. Maria, you're screaming for all the right times to be awake, and at least be sick. It's not like I've never been in a hospital. Only when I was a kid, I had a bug in my ear. The doctors could barely get it out." Molly turned her gaze to Sophia. "I knew you'd be the first to visit me. Zurich must have scared you." On the contrary, he was very tactful about everything. Sophia took her sister-in-law's hand. "Tell me, how do you feel?" Reluctant Maria raised her voice. "I'm fine. Everything will be running by evening." Molly looked toward her companion. "Maria, could you be quiet for a minute? I'm less than 24 hours in this ward, and I'm already tired of you. Let's be sad. Girlfriend, I'm supposed to be discharged today, so you're going to miss me." Molly waved her hands helplessly. "I'm sorry, Sophia, but I guess we won't be able to have a normal conversation." "All right, I'll drop by tomorrow. You don't have to bother. I'm not sick enough to visit every day." Dad's worried too. "He should be here soon," Greg told him. "I told you not to panic." Molly tried to sit up, but immediately wrinkled in pain. Her mother-in-law immediately jumped up to her. "Let me help you." Maria's daughter raised her voice again. "I dream of such a mother-in-law, although I do not want to get married, but still dreaming is not harmful." "Well, I won't bother you. I'll pack my clothes." The girl began to put things in a plastic bag and accompanied this process with clear statements. Sophia began to say goodbye to her sister-in-law, and at that moment a nurse came into the room. "Queen, you're ready." The mouse stretched out, sitting down, threw off her hand to the invisible ones at the visor. "Always ready." Sophia stared at the girl's hand, not immediately realizing what had caught her attention. Molly noticed that there was something wrong with her mother-in-law. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, I'm fine." But the woman's eyes were fixed on her sister-in-law's neighbor. Meanwhile, Maria grabbed her bag and slipped past, and only then Sophia realized that the object of her concern was the silver bracelet adorning the girl's wrist. She hastily said goodbye to her sister-in-law. "Molly, I have to go. I'll call you tonight." The woman hoped to catch up with Masha in the hallway and ask the girl about how she got this bracelet. But right in the doorway, she ran into Molly's father. "Peter, did you scare me?" The man didn't expect to meet under such unusual circumstances either. "You almost knocked me over." "Sophia, is there a fire somewhere?" "No, I'm just afraid I'm going to miss a little man." "Well, I won't keep you." She ran down the corridor, but Maria was nowhere to be seen. Sophia couldn't find her in the check room or the waiting room. She jumped outside, but there were only a few men in hospital uniforms walking around. There were no women around at all. Sophia sat down on a bench. She tried to calm herself. "Did you just think it was the same bracelet Kelly had gotten for her birthday? There aren't many trinkets like that on the market. Go to any jewelry store and you're bound to find a similar piece." Suddenly, Sophia's familiar voice sounded nearby. "What's wrong with you?" "I must admit that I am concerned about your condition, so I said goodbye." "You shouldn't be, Peter. I'm fine. Don't be fooled by an experienced detective. I have a keen eye, and I knew immediately that something had come up that caused you instant stress. Tell me, I may be able to help you." Although Molly and Greg had been married for over 3 years, their parents met very rarely and mostly on major holidays. So their acquaintance was casual, and they had never had a frank conversation. The woman was silent for a moment, and then looked hopefully at the matchmaker. "You know, Peter, can you really help me?" The man sat down next to her, and by his expression, it was easy to guess that he had awakened a professional instinct. "I think I know what prompted you to chase after that girl who ran out of the room a second before I arrived." Probably tennis past or something else. It was more like a sign from above. Aha! I didn't realize you were superstitious. Sometimes there are moments in life when you start to believe in a higher power. It rarely happens to me, but this morning my grandmother came to mind. And then that girl with the bracelet. You intrigue me. If you could tell me more about it. And Sophia told her daughter-in-law's father how many years ago she and her husband gave their daughter a bracelet for her coming of age, which was made to order by a jeweler she knew. It was a personalized piece. There's an engraving on the inside. Kelly had long dreamed of such a thing and was very happy with the gift. A few days later, it disappeared. Tell me, under what circumstances did your daughter disappear? Tears appeared in the woman's eyes. She took a handkerchief out of her purse. I'm sorry, Peter. I'm sorry, Peter. Don't I know what it's like to lose a child? I've had many such cases in my practice, and unfortunately, they don't always end well. I'm still hopeful. I feel in my heart that my Kelly is alive. I was so reluctant to let her go on that unfortunate camping trip, and my husband said you can't stop a girl from doing what she likes. Kelly was very fond of traveling, and that day they went to the lakes in groups. Old people claimed that there were places of power there and told all sorts of legends. Greg went too, because he was worried about the young people. He is almost 10 years older than Kelly. Peter waited for the story to continue, but Sophia was silent. Only after about 5 minutes she said with a kind of frightening doom, Kelly's disappearance was only discovered in the morning. The boys searched for her. They went to all the neighboring villages, but no one had seen the girl. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. Her husband couldn't bear the loss. For more than a week, the search was conducted, but it did not yield results, and Max had a heart attack. He loved his daughter very much. Sophia burst into tears. The matchmaker gave her a chance to cry. You cry, to ease your soul. I promise I'll try to find out what happened on that camping trip. Did your son tell you anything about what happened? He's the key witness. The woman waved her hand. Greg was asleep and didn't see or hear anything. He was with the rest of the campers looking for his sister. So many years had passed, and it was unlikely that he would remember any details now. Sophia was silent, as if remembering something important. Peter, maybe the fact that we haven't found Kelly's papers is relevant. Her passport and driver's license disappeared with her. Your daughter was driving the car on her own. She hasn't gotten behind the wheel yet, but her father promised to buy her a small car. These are important details. As soon as I know anything definite, I'll let you know. But the first thing I'll do is try to find this girl who's the mystery bracelet. Sophia took a long look. Jenna saw her off. She was suddenly at peace, like that time. After praying in church, Kelly. Jenna was the name she was using now. She felt out of sorts. She'd been a mess since this morning. She'd even managed to forget her apartment keys on the nightstand. Her mind was racing with unhappy thoughts. What am I supposed to do now? It is known that I will have to open the door and then repair the lock or buy a new one. The landlady will find out, exactly nail me or give me a day to evict. That's worse than the first option. With such not cheerful thoughts, Kelly appeared in the office of the company, where she worked as a courier for a little over a year. The head of the department immediately jumped on her. Jenna, where do you go? Like where? Running your errands? Delivering mail to the addresses you gave me. You need to move fast. You're young. It always pissed Jenna off when underachievers came out and pretended to be important. So what, Miranda? If I'm young, I should be running around like a horse. By the way, you're not much older than me. Don't compare. You're a long way from me. The girl snapped. To your place. Don't worry. I don't claim it. The superintendent smirked. What do you care? Go to work. I still have to distribute advertising brochures for today, and then to prepare for tomorrow's report for the month. Isn't that a lot for one person? That's your direct responsibility. That's right, Miranda. You've got half the department working their asses off, and I have to run around for everyone. Jenna voiced her displeasure with a deep sense of contempt for the slackers who made up the bulk of the company's staff for the umpteenth time this year. She thought wistfully that she had been wasting her time in this office, wishing she could make herself feel better. She muttered, "Did I have a choice? My whole life has become one endless quest, and I don't know when I'll reach the finish line." From the height of her years, the girl scolded herself for that childish act, but she couldn't afford to go back in time, because she knew what her disappearance from home had led to. Many times she turned back in her mind the events of 10 years ago and came to the conclusion that she would have done exactly the same thing today. Kelly learned to feel first and then speak. One of her first childhood memories was of her older brother's face contorted with anger. When her parents weren't around, he would scare her. Later, Greg began to apply to her younger sister more harsh measures of influence, pouring ice water and saying at the same time, "Die damn doll." Often, a loving sibling specially fed her sweets to make her grandfather appear. He would sneak her cat food and laugh at her when she drank the stuff. Of course, when Kelly was very young, she thought her brother was playing with her. But as time went on, it came to her that it wasn't play, but a sophisticated kind of bullying. It was useless to complain to her mother about her brother's behavior, because she thought her daughter was making it up. "Kelly, this is all your fantasy. You want me to believe them." Only her father tried to protect her from Greg's bullying. Life became a little easier when Greg went to college. There was peace and quiet in the house at once. All the parental love went to her alone. But one day her brother came back, and Kelly realized that he was up to something, and her premonitions were right. One day she saw Greg talking to a man she didn't know at all by accident. This was a man she had never met before at Castle Pines and decided to follow her brother around a bit. The man didn't evoke any positive emotions. He was, what would be the right way to put it, a very unpleasant type. Decently dressed, quite handsome, but he was repulsive at once. Kelly didn't speak to him, of course, but it was enough for her to get a good look at him. He reminded her of someone, but who was it she hadn't realized right away? It wasn't until the 4th or 5th day of following her brother that she got close enough to hear what they were talking about. Greg and the man had entered the cafe, and Kelly immediately followed them. She sat down at a table that was behind an archway. The men couldn't see her, but she could hear them. They were talking about her, not just about her, but about their family in general. The more Kelly listened, the more the hairs on her head moved. The brother couldn't think of anything more original than simply getting rid of his hated sister. It was as if the man had even tried to talk him out of it. "Look, Greg, it's not really her fault. It's all her mother's fault. I mean, it's your mother's fault, too. If she'd waited for me to get out of jail, the three of us would still be living together. Dad, don't you ever say anything like that again. She's my mother, and she has a right to live. And the rest of you and your mother, I can work it out somehow. But these, and I want to start with my sister. She's ruined my whole life." The man immediately replied, "Okay, don't boil. If you want to decide, you have to do it. I didn't realize you had such hatred for her. Do you have any idea how we can pull this off? No, you have some experience with this stuff. That's why I came to you for help. So tell me where she goes, where she likes to go. We need to make sure we're on the up and up." Greg started to tell Kelly was afraid to breathe. She was scared because her brother in a mundane voice listed all the things she likes, where she goes, and at the same time discussed with her father where it is more convenient and not possible to take her out, and to do it so cunningly, so that no one would guess anything. Kelly also realized one simple thing. After Greg gets rid of her, he's going after her father. She's going camping with her friends. They love the outdoors. Now, this is where we're gonna get into it. This could be very interesting for us. After listening to everything Greg knew, the man exclaimed, "That's what's needed." The girl could get lost in the woods, drown, fall from somewhere. The options are endless. Greg said, confused, "I don't get it. I'm the one who's supposed to be hating her. Who do you hate so much? Or are you going to send someone else on the trip? Don't worry. You're a big man, And she's just a young girl. You'll be fine. We'll figure it out. Yeah, but how am I gonna get in with them? They're not my friends. I mean, I know some of them, but we're not friends enough for me to go with them. It's pretty simple. You just tell your mom that it's not safe to go camping like this, that you're worried about your sister. She's a young girl, and you're only going so you can keep an eye on her. The men were long gone. Kelly was still sitting squeezed into the chair. Something had to be done. She knew Greg would convince her mother. Kelly would not be able to change her mind. Rather, the mother would only be strengthened in her decision because her daughter did not want to be in foster care. And the mother will also be very happy that they finally have a good relationship. Everything happened exactly as Kelly expected. Mom was very happy that Greg wanted to accompany Kelly on the camping trip. She kept saying, "Well, that's good. Your brother and sister, you should have a close, trusting relationship." Greg smiled at her sister, and Kelly smiled back. She couldn't show him that she knew or guessed everything. Then the girl might just not make it to the camping trip. She had planned everything diligently. Kelly had always been noted for her ability to think straight, so she double-checked everything several times to make sure there were no overlaps. Greg had to do something with her at night, and on the first night, she knew for sure that he would not give up on anything. That's why she prepared in earnest. Kelly had money, and not the money that her father and mother constantly transferred to her card, but cash, which the girl had been saving for years. For nothing in particular, she just put aside what was left of her pocket money. She was always serious and frugal. Besides, there was nothing to buy because Kelly had everything. She took all the essentials with her, took all the money, especially since no one in the house knew about her savings. And most importantly, the girl toothed invented one address, which she wrote in her father's notebook. It was Helen's address, the woman her father had dated before he met her mother. Kelly's choice was no accident. One day, when Kelly thought she was in love and was having a disagreement with her father, Kelly shouted at him, "Dad, what do you know about love?" "You met Mom. That's all love is." Max smiled then. "Well, that's just your opinion. Do you want me to tell you about a very wonderful woman that I can't forget to this day? I love your mom very much, but Helen, she was probably not only a woman, but the best all-understanding friend." Kelly stared at him, eyes wide open. She had never imagined that her parents could have had anyone in their lives other than each other. "Helen and I met by chance. She was scolding me for almost running over a kitten. Of course, I just saw it late and stopped right away. But I got the best of her. You know, she was so beautiful in her anger, and then she just kind of spun around." Helen fought back to the last. She was married, and she had an invalid husband who didn't do a damn thing but grind her nerves. I'd ask her many times to leave. And then she just kicked me out. Said she was happy with me, that I showed her a different life. But she couldn't leave her husband, and she didn't want to cheat anymore. I understood her. Cheating is too hard for her. Is she so pure, or what? Helen took an oath from me that I would never try to contact her again and try to arrange my personal life. I tried to help her financially at least, but she wouldn't take it. And that was that. Kelly remembered that after her father's story she had stayed up all night. And when she thought about whether the young man she had fallen in love with was capable of such actions, she realized that it was not love after all. Kelly was going to turn to her for help. Greg looked at her the whole time they were getting there. Kelly was getting sick to her stomach. It was his looks. She felt like a hunted victim. Everything went well once everyone settled down. And the girl Kelly was in the tent with fell asleep. She quietly grabbed her backpack and looked outside. Conversation could still be heard in the tents. This meant that Greg would not be doing anything right now. He wouldn't do anything during the night, because it would be clear that the culprit for her death was someone who was here. Kelly wasn't going to hide for long. She needed some time to pass. Maybe something would change, or she would figure out how to get out of this whole situation. For now, there were no thoughts in her head. The door was opened by a pretty woman. "Hello, you're here to see me." "Yes, Helen. The woman looked at her with interest. Yes, I'm Helen. Have we met? Kelly smiled sadly. Not really. I'm Max's daughter. Helen stepped back, clasped her hands to her chest. What's wrong with Max? Kelly rushed to reassure her. No, Dad's fine. He told me about you. That's why I came to see you. I need help, but only from someone who won't be thought of. Helen looked at her carefully. Come in. I'm alone now. My daughter has gone to her grandmother's. Strange, but Dad didn't say anything about a daughter. She must have been born later. They talked all night. Helen agreed that it would be better for her to spend some time here. At her place. Don't worry, you're not embarrassing us at all. I've got the world. You two are bound to become friends. How old is she? She's 2 years older than you. You know, after your father and I split up, my husband died a couple years later. He'd been drinking too much, so I decided to find my dad. I even came to your town. But then I found out he got married and his wife was expecting a baby and left right away. Kelly smiled sadly. I guess I should be jealous of your father, resentful of your mom. But it turns out that Mom took your place. No, don't ever think that. Mom met me when I wasn't around. She didn't take my place. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. And anyway, it's been years, so it's all in the past. Maria turned out to be a real-world girl. And Kelly also thought they looked a lot alike. Kelly even gave her her bracelet, which was very dear to her. And then Maria came into the room and said, Kelly, your dad's dead. It's all over the internet. That's it. From that moment on, Kelly's life was divided into before and after. Kelly, maybe you should stay. Where are you going? How are you going to live? Like everyone else. Get an apartment, get a job. But we're not kicking you out. Helen wiped away her tears, and Kelly spoke quickly. You understand me. Please, I can't. I can't live peacefully as if nothing had happened. Daddy, it's out of me. I should have realized this would happen. Daddy loved me very much, and Mommy will never forgive me. Let it be so. Mommy was already crying for me and Daddy. And me. I'll start all over again. It's just the way it is. At least give me your new address. No. Helen, please forgive me. I don't deserve to talk to you. Kelly, but you can't hide forever. They're gonna find you. You'll be working. You'll be on the payroll. They'll find you, right? No, no one's gonna find me. Kelly stepped into the night. In the pocket of her jacket was a brand new crystal and a passport, which she had gotten not so long ago for very good money. Almost everything she had. Molly was being discharged in a week. In all that time, Sophia hadn't seen Peter. And then they met nose to nose. Sophia, hello. You are also for Molly. But my daughter has long been more of a part of you than me. So I'll just meet her and walk her home. Well, I won't just let you go. At least we'll have tea together. Peter smiled, clarifying. I won't refuse, especially since I managed to find out something. Sophia raised her eyebrows upward. So fast. Did you really find out something about that girl? Yes, I did. I didn't know it was possible. I've been looking for my daughter for years, and still no sign of her. Well, Sophia, that's if you're working for a paycheck. But if you work as a friend, it's a different matter. I don't justify my colleagues at all, but that's life. The woman nodded sadly. Yes, unfortunately, you're right. Molly sadly asked her mother-in-law. Didn't Greg come? No, Molly, he couldn't. The thing is that we have some changes in the firm, and now he has to work hard. Under Kevin's guidance, he'll try to come early today, he promised, and he said hello. Molly smiled. I can imagine what kind of mood he'll be in. I've heard enough about Kevin. Sophia laughed. He's complaining. It's okay. Let him study. It's for his own good. Molly only sat with them for 10 minutes. I'll go and lie down. I'm still a little weak. I have ideas, of course. My daughter. Peter smiled. It's so unusual, even unusual, to hear my daughter called daughter. Sophia smiled, but she's really like a daughter to me. You know, sometimes I think she's a lot like Kelly, just as gentle, kind. Peter frowned. Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Sophia looked up. Yes, I'm listening very carefully. Peter took out a small notebook. So here's what I found out. Maria Queen lives in a small town. By the way, your late husband used to live there. I don't get it. What does that have to do with Max? Take your time, Sophia. So this girl lives with her mom. The mom's a couple years younger than you. But that's not what's important. I went to that town, walked around, saw the people, talked to them, and I found out one very interesting detail. This woman gave birth to her daughter while she was married. Everything seemed to be right, but her husband could not have children because he was, crippled after some accident. Everyone told me that the woman was dating someone rich and handsome. He invited her to come with him, but she refused and stayed with her husband. As you can imagine, in such small towns, everyone knows everything about everyone, and even more like to discuss, especially if you are properly interested in it. Of course, I managed to get interested, and it turns out by all accounts that I dated Maria's mother. It was your husband in those days. He was not yet your husband. He probably didn't even know you because it was only after he broke up with that woman that he moved here. I'm not really sure what the bracelet and everything else has to do with it. I haven't had a lot of time. But I promise you, I will definitely find out. Sophia silently stood up and left the room. She came back and put a few bundles of money in front of her. This is for your expenses. Something tells me you're on the right track. As soon as we find out about Dawn, that is, how he got to that girl, that's how we'll find out. Peter, please don't tell my son anything. I don't know why, but I don't think he'd be happy if Kelly was found. And he'll say I'm crazy because Kelly is presumed dead. And I'm the only one who can't believe it. Peter nodded and worried. As long as the investigation lasts you, and I will never know anything. I understand that. I'll take money, but not much, just enough for a return ticket. Sophia shook her head negatively. No, take the money for all expenses. She also went upstairs, brought the keys. These are the keys to her husband's car. It's sitting in the garage doing nothing. They take it in for a checkup every 6 months, and that's it. I'll call the garage and have them give it to you. Peter got behind the wheels. Thank you very much. It's a very long commute on buses and trains. You know, you don't assure yourself very much that Kelly will be found. You realize you could be disappointed. Sophia looked at him quickly. I'm sure she's alive. Do whatever you want with me. Greg arrived a little early, as promised, and hugged his wife. Why did the appendicitis happen to you? Well, I really missed you. She even laughed. You say that like there's only one appendicitis in our town in 3 years. And I have it. No, of course not. Somebody's gonna feed me. I even put my finger to my lips. Don't yell. So Mom must be feeling sick. She's locked herself in her room for hours without coming out. Greg raised his eyebrows at his mother. It wasn't like that. Her beloved Molly was out of the hospital, and her mother wasn't flocking around her like a hen. Greg knocked softly on the door. Mom, can I come in? Yes, son, come in. He entered the room and frowned. Mom, you again. Around Sophia were spread pictures of Kelly. She looked at her son with tearful eyes. I don't understand why you are so uncomfortable with the memory of Kelly. She's your sister. Greg tried to soften his expression. Mom, you misunderstand me. I don't want you to be so upset. Why? Kelly, no, and nothing can bring her back. After all these years, you have to get over it. No, I'm never gonna get over it, and you know it. And lately I've been getting this feeling like we're gonna find her soon. Greg almost cried, God forbid, but he held back. He'd been getting too many bad vibes lately too. And one of them is that if someone brings up Cleopatra's firm again, they're bound to find out that the firm was created by him. And it was run by Leo, his father, and the same man who had once been his mother's husband. Greg didn't want to hurt his mother, but she was too much of a nuisance. There was no way to go into the open. And waiting until the firm was legally in his possession wasn't something he wanted to do either. He wanted to become its sole owner as soon as possible and make decisions on his own, and finally fire that nasty Kevin. "Mom, let's go to dinner. Molly's setting the table." How is Molly supposed to rest? Oh, that dissipated. Mother took a quick step towards the kitchen. Greg grabbed one picture of his sister and hissed, "What is it that you still give me peace of mind? I hope you died a long time ago." He threw the photo back and followed Sophia. Peter showed up a week later. He was just jammed with news. Really, he didn't know how he should handle the situation now. What he had learned could not leave life the same. No one's life. Not Sophia's, not Greg's, and certainly not his daughter's. Peter called Sophia. "We need to meet. I have a lot of news." The woman was just at work, picked up the phone to warn her son that she was going to be away. But then she changed her mind and dialed Kevin's number. "Kevin, I need to leave, but I want no one to know that I am not at the firm." Kevin always understood her from the first word, especially Greg. "Okay, I hear you. Sophia, I need help. And to be honest, I don't know yet. I'll call you. One more thing. I keep wondering about that Cleopatra firm. Can't you find out more about it?" "And I will. Especially since it's been bugging me too." Sophia sank into a chair in front of Peter. "I ordered you some tea." "Yes, thank you for recognizing me." "Well, I guess I'll start with the main thing. Is your daughter alive?" "Well, at least she was alive when everyone thought she was dead." Sophia went pale, clutched her chest. "Please calm down. It's not that simple. We're going to have a hard and long conversation." The woman listened attentively to everything Peter was telling her, every now and then she shook her head. "No, it just can't be." Maybe Sophia, the girl, was so scared that she didn't dare to ask for help from anyone she knew. "Do you understand?" Did she not? "Yes. You know, Kelly told me a few times about Greg, but I always thought it was just a figment of her imagination. Because everything seems so meaningful when you're a teenager. But why did she go there in the first place? That's another news flash for you. The fact is that Helen was actually dating, and Max, after they broke up, had a daughter, Maria, whom you saw in the hospital. It's not hard to guess if her husband was up to no good. And Max? Well, by all accounts, it's Max's daughter that he never found out about. Maybe that was the reason the girls had become such good friends that Kelly had given her her bracelet. Sophia looked up at Peter. "I don't understand. It's been so many years. Why hasn't Kelly come back?" "There are several reasons. The most important one, which she told Helen, is that she blames herself for her father's death, feels guilty in front of you, in front of the whole world. Either she's punishing herself, or she really feels that guilty in front of you. Second, are you sure that if Kelly comes back, she'll be safe? I mean, just hearing that conversation saved her life. No, that's just not possible. Greg, he couldn't. Sophia, I hate to say this, but I'm going to have to tell my daughter. She needs to know who's around her. After all, it's dangerous. No, he can't be a monster. He's my son." At that moment, the phone rang in Sophia's pocket. She picked it up. "Kevin, it's urgent. I'm a little busy. I won't take up much of your time. I want to tell you that Cleopatra's manager is very familiar to you. That's Greg, Leo's father. Yes, in fact, Greg gave him the firm. But why? If you stop thinking of Greg only as a son, you'll understand." Kevin passed out, and Sophia looked up at Peter. The man shivered involuntarily. How much had the woman's look changed? Now before him sat a lady with a steely gaze and a very heavy expression. "Peter, I'm going to need some more of your help so you don't have to worry. I'm sending Molly to the sea tonight. I'll tell her she needs to recuperate. She'll listen to me." "Yes, thank you. I'll do what I can." She leaned toward him and began to speak. "Sophia, but I don't want to go anywhere without Greg. You don't even understand. Greg needs a healthy wife. Your hemoglobin is low. You need to get some rest. He's so busy now anyway, you won't even see him. Greg, who at first grudgingly accepted his mother's words, sighed, "Yes, Mom is right. Lately she's just been swamping me with work. Nothing will happen to us in a week. Go get some rest and come back soon." Of course, he didn't like that his mother didn't offer him a vacation, but she's been in a mood lately. So it's best to keep quiet and keep working to make sure everyone finally forgets this Cleopatra thing. Father is also good. As soon as he realized that the smell of fried, just withdrew money from where he could and got away. And now he's got to deal with it. Mother nodded her head and went to her room. Didn't even kiss him. The next day, after Molly left and he went back to work, he got a call from Sophia. "Gotcha. I have to go away for a few days. I'll call you." "Mom," but there's a short ringtone. Then a text for Kevin in charge. Oh, how much he wanted to tell her now. But Mom didn't pick up the phone again. She was on her way with Peter to where her daughter was supposedly. "Jenna, are you late again?" Kelly inwardly howled. What the hell was wrong with this? Everything's been a mess since this morning. The faucet leaked this morning. Obviously, you can't buy a new one at 7 o'clock hours. But to leave it like that means putting the neighbors at risk. We had to wait for the plumber, who is never in a hurry. "Miranda, honestly, it's not my fault." The woman folded her arms across her chest and looked at her. "Well, I'm listening to you. Tell us another incident that somehow only happens to you." It wasn't true. Everyone in the office was always late, but it was only Kelly who was getting smacked around. Now the girl realized that she couldn't work in such conditions anyway. "And you know what, Miranda, I'm not going to tell you anything and prove it, because it's all useless." The boss's eyebrows went up. "How do you talk? What do you think you're doing? What are you? An errand boy, or rather an errand girl? You keep your mouth shut, or you'll be out of here in no time. And I'd be happy to fly you out. I'm just wondering what the wording will be. You understand that I have nothing to lose now, and I will go to our chief to tell him how the department works, which spoils the firm all the indicators. And I'll even explain why it's happening." Miranda gasped with indignation, not for the first time. This girl is insinuating to her that she is failing in her duties. "You're at the UN, and you won't get anything from me without a paycheck." Kelly thought wistfully that there was no way to pay the rent. On what grounds do you not give an employee the money he has earned? You have to pay him back within 24 hours. Miranda stared in amazement at the woman who approached them, frozen, afraid to turn around. Tears streamed from her eyes. She wanted to run away, but realized that such coincidences do not happen. Her mother had found her. Everything else seemed to fade into a fog. She didn't hear Miranda answering. She slowly turned to where her mom was standing. "Mommy." Kelly literally fell into Sophia's arms. She was holding on with all her might. "My silly girl, why didn't you tell me everything? Why didn't you tell me? If I hadn't found you." Greg had to leave after talking to his mother. He listened in silence with his head bowed. Only once he said, "You're ready to put me in jail for her, just like you always do." "You are wrong. I will not put you in jail, but only because you are my son. And I give you the opportunity to start a new life. And I'm even gonna help you do it. But you don't get to decide how or who should live. You're not God." Molly said she's going with her husband. He needed someone close, and she was the closest thing he had. Peter was not very happy with this decision, but accepted his daughter's choice. Sophia met Helen, and after a short time they became real friends, and Kelly and Maria studied hard to run the company. A year after all the events, Kelly and Maria came home smiling mysteriously. "Moms, we have news for you." The women who were drinking tea looked at each other. Sounds terrifying. Helen had moved closer to them at Sophia's insistence. Kelly laughed and nudged Masha in the side. "Come on, you're better at this." Maria drew in a breath and said, "Today we have guests. We decided to introduce you to our guys to get their approval, so to speak. Anyway, Kelly and I are getting married." The girls expected any kind of reaction, but not this. First air was thrown by Maria's mother, followed by Kelly's mother. A second later, the women were laughing. Maria and Kelly looked at them resentfully. What did we say that was so funny? Sophia waved her hands. Nothing, girls, nothing really. It's just that we were going to announce the same thing to you today, which is the same thing. Kelly, not understanding, stared at her mother. The women glanced over again. Well, we were going to introduce someone to you today too. Maria asked cautiously, but you're not getting married. Helen nodded her head, and she was. Kelly asked stupidly, really, and to whom? Sophia said I was marrying Kevin and Helen was marrying Peter. The girls looked at each other and suddenly laughed and rushed to hug their mothers. But that's great. That's just great. We'll all be married and happy. And let's have 4 weddings in one day. Sophia waved. Oh, you'll think of something. How's that? You're going to the store on the same day. Looks like we're going to have to set the table a lot more seriously today than we thought. Greg didn't make it to the wedding, but he called to say congratulations. Molly couldn't come because she was expecting a baby. All the men supported the girls' idea, and almost the whole town came out to watch when a real cortege of wedding cars marched down the street. No one here remembered such a thing, that 2 mothers and 2 daughters got married on the same day. Subscribe and click the bell. Camille had already been living in the orphanage for more than 6 months. The 13-year-old girl kept herself apart all this time. She did not want to come into contact with her peers and classmates. For this, she was nicknamed Bun. Camille was not at all offended by this offensive nickname, as she realized that it was her own fault that now she is called such a girl. When she got to the orphanage, she kept thinking, was it right that she volunteered to live in this institution? After all, Camille told the class teacher about her life, and the teacher sounded the alarm. And all was that Camille had divided her life into 2 parts. Until the age of 11, the girl grew up a happy child. She was cherished by her mom, and Dad tried his best they could to buy fashionable things. In general, the parents wanted their daughter to not need anything. And then something happened, and everything went wrong. Initially, the parents between themselves began to fight often, after which the girl's mother often cried. Then he stopped coming home. The father slept over. Camille realized that there was an unhealthy atmosphere in the house, and it would not end well. However, Camille couldn't understand why her parents were fighting, and so she asked her mother, "Why do you and her father fight so often? Do you really want to know?" "I do. I want us to live like we used to, happily and as a family. And I don't want you to cry." "Then go and ask your father why we fight with him." The girl nodded to her mother in response, and when her father came, she turned to him with the same question. The father looked at his daughter carefully, and then called her back to the children's room and put her on a chair, and sat opposite him. The man nervously ran his palm through his hair and then said, "Daughter, you are not so small, and some things should understand. Anyway, I've fallen out of love with your mother, and I want to divorce her. I wanted to talk to you about it earlier, but I didn't dare. Divorcing my mom won't affect our relationship. I just won't live here, but I'll visit you." "Dad, is there another woman in your life?" "That's a serious question. I'll be honest with you. You're right. I have a woman I love and want to live with. You've made your point. I don't want to talk to you anymore," roughly said the girl and rushed to the bathroom, where she gave vent to tears. Now Camille understood her mother, who had been crying a lot lately. After this conversation with her father, a few days passed, and the man soon packed his things and left their family. Camille became withdrawn after Papa's departure. She was incredibly hurt that her father had betrayed her and her mom for another woman. And the girl's mother, after she was abandoned by her husband, just sobbed and cursed her fate. At first, Camille's father visited her, coming once a week to school after lessons. However, Camille did not talk to him and tried to get away from her father as soon as possible. This continued for a month, and the man began to come to school less and less often. Meanwhile, The girl's mother, in order to somehow survive the betrayal, began to impose on strong drinks. Even not perfectly understood that the mother degenerates every day. And when once again the father appeared at school, the girl told him everything and asked him to talk to her mother. The man looked sadly at his daughter and said that he would not do this. And then he added, "Your mom is a grown woman and should understand what she is doing. And I also want to say that now I will rarely visit you. You don't spoil me much with your visits anyway. There's a reason for that. I have a woman I live with who's expecting a baby in the near future, and now I'm gonna have a lot on my mind. You must realize that a baby needs a lot of attention." That's a great thing to say. You're telling your own daughter. So I don't want to be taken care of. Get out then, and you cannot appear in my life at all. Barely holding back her sobs, the girl said, "I understand that you are offended at the moment. Be patient a little. As soon as the baby is born and grows up, I will visit you more often. You should be happy because you'll have a sister I'll introduce you to. I've told you everything. Go away. And don't show up with anyone. I don't want to meet anyone. I hate you and despise you." The girl said quickly and hurried home. Camille couldn't wait to cry, but she didn't want to do it in front of her father. As soon as Camille got home, she rushed to her room and burst into tears. She wanted her mother to be there to tell her about her conversation with her father. However, when her mother came home drunk, the girl lost all desire to tell her mother anything. A few days passed. Camille came home and was very surprised to find the front door unlocked. Camille remembered exactly that she had closed the door. The girl entered the room and saw that her mother was sitting in the kitchen with tea and a cat on the table. Camille involuntarily wrinkled her nose and said to Mama, "Are you drinking again? For some reason, it wasn't at work that I got fired. Can you imagine, my daughter? Such a valuable employee was kicked out of the company. What are we going to do now? I'll look for a new job. Don't worry, everything will be fine. It's all your father's fault. He left us to our fate." Camille hoped her mother would go to look for a new job the next day, but she didn't. The girl's mother drank heavily for almost a week while she had money. When the finances ran out, she started selling gold jewelry first, and then she started selling things. This went on for some time. Camille tried her best to convince her mother to stop drinking, but she, being drunk, drove away her daughter. Camille realized that soon they would not be able to buy bread. The girl did not know what to do. Camille began to feel hungry all the time, as her mother rarely cooked at home. And lately her mother began to leave in the evening and come back in the morning and again drunk. That's when Camille decided to talk to Emily's class teacher. She told the teacher about her life. The teacher listened attentively to the school drill and then said to the girl, "You can't live like this. I will try to talk to your mom, but I am afraid it will be a waste of time. The only thing I can offer you is to live in an orphanage where you will be properly taken care of. Maybe the termination of parental rights will make your mom reconsider her views on life, and she will give up her addiction. And don't get me wrong that after your story I will have to contact the guardianship authorities anyway, because I have to respond to the fact that my student does not finish her meals and often stays home alone at night." The very next day, Emily tried to talk to Camille's mother, but the conversation did not work, as the landlady was in an inadequate state. The teacher made another attempt 2 days later, but the situation was repeated. And then the teacher detained the girl after lessons and told her it was useless to talk to your mom. "I ask you not to take offense at me, but I'm appealing to the guardianship authorities. I just don't have a way out. I'm not offended. I've been thinking about your words for a long time, and it seems to me that I would be much better off in an orphanage now. You see, I'm just afraid that I'll go down a crooked path and start stealing from stores so that I won't feel hungry." Good for you for thinking that way. Don't despair. Maybe when you get to the orphanage, your mom will realize that she might lose her own daughter. And soon Camille showed up at the orphanage. Now she was sitting there thinking about her mother and whether it was right for her to want to live in this institution. Camille was distracted from her thoughts by a woman's voice that said, "Sitting alone again as your peers rampage outside." The girl turned around and looked at the woman with a smile. It was Evelyn, the cleaning lady. Camille had become friends with her. A month after coming here, all the children at the orphanage thought Evelyn was a woman. Camille had a different opinion of the janitor. She liked it when the janitor affectionately called her by her first name and asked her how her day was going. Evelyn walked over to the girl and sat down next to her. The older woman already knew Camille's story. For what reasons the child had ended up in the orphanage, the cleaning lady herself did not understand what made her feel special toward this withdrawn girl. And now, seeing the pensive Camille, she quietly turned to her, what she was dreaming about at the moment. "Honestly, about my mom in my life. Tell me, if it's not a secret. I've been waiting a long time for my mom to come and take me away from here. But she never even visited me once. And now I was wondering if I was right to want to live in an orphanage, and now I realize that I was right. I don't need the pits at all. And I have an aversion to her. I feel like pretty soon I'm just gonna hate her." You can't say that about your own mother. You know, I grew up in an orphanage too. My mom gave me up when I was a baby. And at first, I had the same thoughts as you. But as I'd grown up, I've changed my mind drastically. Tell me why. Interested? Camille asked. I'll try to explain it to you with my own example. As soon as I left the orphanage, I entered medical school. When I graduated, I met a young man named Roman. This guy started courting me, and soon we both realized that we loved each other. Soon we had a wedding with him. And then we had our firstborn son, who was named Constantine. And now I come to the most important part. Why did I stop hating my mother? It's because with my husband I lived in peace and harmony. We had a wonderful son. You see, I've been a happy woman all these years. And now you just imagine that if my mother had not given birth to me, I would not have experienced any of this, because I would not be in this world. And that's why I am grateful to my mother for giving me life. And let my mother left me in the hospital, but I do not blame her, because it is quite possible that she had good reasons for it. But you know my story, don't you? My mom's only good reason was to drink hard liquor. Your mom slipped up. She's a weak person. Not everyone can be a strong person. Don't just hate her. Believe that you'll grow up. You'll have a happy life. And you will thank your mom more than once for living in this world. Smiling, said the old woman. I don't know. Maybe you are right about that. And tell me, why do you work as a cleaner if you have a nursing education? That's a separate story. At one time I worked as a nurse in a children's clinic. When the years passed, I retired, but continued to work. But soon the management told me that it was necessary to give way to young staff. I had to quit. I did not regret it, as I had a loving husband with me. And my son at that time got married and left for another city. And after I was retired and sitting at home, my husband passed away a year later. And why did you go back to work after that? I don't understand. Sitting alone in four walls is not a particularly pleasant occupation. You're so young, you wouldn't realize it. I just started to feel lonely. And then my son took out a mortgage to buy an apartment. He needed help with the money. So I decided that I'd rather work than just stay at home beating around the bush. And now I've been working here for 4 years, and I've never regretted it. Why don't the children from the orphanage treat you well? I think that this is a question you should ask your peers, not me, Evelyn said with a smile. And then she added, and to find out the answers of boys and girls, you need to talk to them, not stay away from them. Years of life went by. Everything was also kept aloof from peers. Both the boys and the orphanage staff were used to it by now, except that Evelyn was dissatisfied with the fact that Camille was not a sociable child and often talked to the girl about it. And the girl, in turn, in response, only kept silent. Time flew by. And now Camille has already turned 18 years old. It was time for the girl to start living on her own. And the day before Camille had to leave the orphanage, she was approached by a cleaning lady who said, "You're starting a new epic in your life. You must be careful, because living on your own, you can make a lot of mistakes. I know that the state gave you a one-room apartment somewhere in the periphery, but that's okay. The main thing is that you have your own corner. The only place you've been allocated is there. There's no furniture. I already thought of that. I'll buy you a kitchen table with 4 stools. It'll be a housewarming gift. A bed and a dresser. I'll give them from my son's room. He doesn't need this furniture, but it'll be good for you. I'll give you some of the kitchen utensils. Of course, you've got to give me something to eat. When I decide to visit you, if you don't mind, I'll always be glad to have you here. You've been so supportive while I've been here. I'll be eternally grateful. Oh, don't give me that big talk. And what kind of gratitude is there to be thankful for? Why don't you tell me what you're gonna do? How are you gonna get out of here? I want to be an announcer, and I'm gonna try to get into college. And of course, I'll look for part-time work in the evenings to make a living. And if you don't get in, believe me, it happens a lot. I'll get a job, and in a year I'll try again. And soon Camille moved into a studio apartment. She quickly got settled in and immediately got to know her neighbor. It was a middle-aged woman whose name was Wendy. Soon Camille tried to enter the institute, but disappointment awaited her. The girl missed a few points. After she found out that she was unlucky with the enrollment, she came home in a bad mood. She wanted to cry with grief. Camille only sat down on the bed as she received a call on her cell phone from Evelyn, who asked how things were going. The girl tried not to cry and mouthed, "I didn't get in, and I had so much faith in my abilities." That says what? That you shouldn't be overconfident. Just write that you're going to make your beautiful face raw and put it aside for the moment. Otherwise, I'll scold you like a little girl who went to the wrong potty. The old woman said sternly, "Do you know how to cheer up?" Laughing, the girl said, "That's great. What are your plans now?" "Well, I'm going to look for a job. I need finances to live on." A few days later, the girl got a job in a flower pavilion. The manager at first worked together with Camille, helping her to learn the art of how to beautifully design a bouquet. And after a couple of weeks, the director of the pavilion, Jenna, approved the girl's actions and said that now she could work independently. Camille was happy because she was praised by the director. And so the first day came when Camille went out to work at the pavilion. One girl was very worried, but the first shift went out without any misunderstandings. And on the second day, Camille went to work without worrying that she would not be able to fulfill her duties. The first month flew by as Camille worked in the flower pavilion. The girl enjoyed going to work. One day, a young man came to see her and immediately complimented Camille on her good looks. Camille often heard such words from representatives of the stronger sex and calmly treated them. But this young man said the compliment in a special way, and the girl looked at him with interest. Meanwhile, the guy said, "Can I buy a bouquet of flowers that will reflect your beauty?" Camille, hearing this, laughed and handed the visitor a bouquet of decorative daisies. The young man, seeing the flowers, also laughed and said, "You obviously underestimate yourself. And to be honest, I need the bouquet to give to my friend's girlfriend. It's her birthday today." Camille looked around at the ready bouquets and then chose gladioli. She handed the flowers to the young man and said that such a bouquet should be to the girl's taste. The guy took the mustache and paid and then asked permission to see Camille off in the evening. Camille was not ready for this and therefore refused. Soon the visitor left. The girl had worked her shift and was getting ready to close the pavilion when she saw again the guy who had complimented her today. She looked questioningly at the young man and asked him if he needed another bouquet. "No flowers today. I just want to see you off. But I already refused your request." "All right. Then sell me a bouquet of white roses." Camille complied with the visitor's request, and he took the flowers and put them on the counter, saying that the roses were bought for her. And after that, the guy left the pavilion. The girl was surprised by the stranger's behavior, and at that moment thought that the young man was strange. After this incident, a couple of days passed, and Camille already closed the pavilion and was going to go home. Suddenly, she was called by a lover of daisies. "Would you give me a couple of minutes?" Camille looked at the stranger and recognized him as the man who had recently given her roses. The young man stood near the foreign car and elbowed her. The girl asked what the guy wanted, and the one after her words came up to her and answered that he could not wait to get acquainted with the beauty. Camille did not know how to act in this situation and therefore said, "Let's not do this, and I disgust you." The young man said in surprise, "I didn't say that. I'm just not used to it. Getting acquainted like that. You're putting a price on yourself," sarcastically said the stranger. And then he added, "How long do you have to be groomed to tell me your name?" "All right, you're on. My name is Camille. Now we're talking. And my name is Stephen. Let's get you a ride in the car." "If you want a ride, I'm not getting in the car on foot." Stephen nodded and followed the girl. The young man told different anecdotes about Camille laughed. The girl noted to herself that the new acquaintance was an excellent conversationalist and easy to communicate with. And soon the couple approached Camille's house. Camille thanked the guy for seeing her off, but Stephen stopped her and asked for permission to take a leisurely walk with her again tomorrow. The girl, after some thought, agreed. When she got home, Camille involuntarily thought about the man. It suddenly seemed to her that perhaps this man was her soulmate. And then she pushed these thoughts away from her, realizing that she did not know Stephen at all to allow such thoughts. All the following week, the young man met the girl from work almost every day. From him, she learned that he was 24 years old and studying at the institute. The guy also said that he lived on his own in a 2-room apartment. Stephen said that his father is engaged in business and his mother is a housewife. When Camille heard all this, she said with a smile, "You're just like a major." "That's right. I think I am, too, and it doesn't offend me. Why did I tell you all about me? You haven't told me anything about your own person. I'm also interested to know who your parents are, why you work in a flower pavilion and not study." Camille looked at the guy and said that she was a pupil of an orphanage. She did not tell him the reason why she had gotten there. She was uncomfortable to admit that her mom consumed strong drinks. Stephen, when he heard that Camille was from the orphanage, looked at her in a strange way. This look was noticed by the girl, and she asked what was wrong. The guy at the same moment smiled welcomingly and said that everything was fine, and then invited the interlocutor to come to visit him. Camille refused. It seemed to her that it was too early to be alone with Stephen. The young man, when he heard that Camille did not want to visit, said reproachfully, "And I thought we trusted each other. But it turned out to be completely different. I get the feeling you think I'm a monster. You're wrong. You're a nice guy, but I'd rather get some fresh air than sit in an apartment. But it's better to get some fresh air than to sit in an apartment. You and I have plenty of time. Take me up on my offer. By the way, I have a large soap collection. I know my hobby sounds weird, but I collect soap. Interesting." With a smile said a girl and thought, "And why not really come to visit? Well, at least for an hour." The young man, seeing the doubts of the interlocutor, immediately said, "I'll get you home safe and sound, and you will choose the soap you like. You can even have several and take it from me as president." The girl looked at Stephen and agreed. The couple got into the car and the car started. Camille was riding in a foreign car for the first time. She was inspecting the interior. The young man was discreetly observing it. When the girl turned her attention to the road, the guy asked if she liked the car. Camille enthusiastically concluded that the car was wonderful. She added that it must be very expensive. Stephen voiced the cost, and the interlocutor, ouch, nodded. The driver, seeing her reaction, laughed. Soon the couple was already in Stephen's apartment. The girl immediately assessed the atmosphere and softly mumbled that everything here is arranged with taste. The young man smiled and replied that it was the merit of his mother. And then the owner of the apartment offered the guests to drink a glass of sparkling wine. But Camille flatly refused. Then Stephen opened the bar and took out a bottle of liquor from there. He dug it out and splashed the liquid into the shot glasses with the words, "I bought it when I suggested you buy it from Aristov. This drink is not quoted in the orphanage. You must be used to Belenka." The girl from these words of the guy shuddered as from a blow, and sharply said that she does not use strong drinks at all, and then said that if he once again allowed himself to talk to her in this way, then their communication on this note stops. The guy smiled in response and asked his guest to relax, promising that he would not allow himself to do that again. And then Stephen poured himself a strong drink and emptied the glass. The girl, seeing this, involuntarily wrinkled her nose. Then she asked to see the soap collection. The owner of the apartment cordially agreed to fulfill Camille's request and invited her into the bathroom, where the original shelf on the entire wall was pierced, on which were arranged pieces of soap. The girl began to look at the collection with curiosity. Meanwhile, the young man had left the bathroom and had another 100 grams of hard liquor before returning to his visit. Stephen watched as Camille stood on tiptoe and took out first one bar of soap, which she brought to her nose and inhaled the aroma, and then the next. The man felt at that moment a desire to possess this girl right now at this moment enveloped him, and he wrapped his arms around Camille and his hands and turns her to face him, and then starts to tear off the girl's blouse. Camille screamed out loudly for him to leave her alone. However, the guy picked up the guest in his arms and carried her to the couch. Camille was already well aware of what the owner of the apartment was going to do. And then she screamed, "Stop, please. I don't want it to happen like this. After all, I haven't been intimate with a man once before. Not to build for myself, not to cross the road from the orphanage. And they've been doing it there since they were 12. Just be a decent girl now, and we'll give each other pleasure." Camille tried to push the young man away, but the forces were unequal, and after a while Stephen lay on his back and breathed often. And the girl, tucking her legs under her belly, barely audible, was crying. The owner of the apartment, literally after a few minutes from breathing, said, "And you did not deceive me. It turned out, in fact, pious diva, but you pass. You liked it too, didn't you? But tell me the truth. I will now rest, and we can continue." After these words, the girl jumped to her feet and ran to the kitchen, where she grabbed a knife. As soon as Stephen began to approach her, she screamed exhaustedly that she would take her own life if he came near her. The landlord snorted and calmly replied, "I don't need to touch you. I've had mine. Now you can go to all four sides. By the way, you can choose a few bars of soap from the collection. That's your pleasure fee. If you want to meet me, you'll find my address here. Oh, and one more thing. Don't go to the police because my father has connections there. You're only hurting yourself by doing this." The girl looked at the guy with hatred and quickly got dressed, then ran out of the apartment. Camille knew that it was a long way for her to get home, and it would be better to take transportation. But she felt like people knew what had just happened and were looking at her with judgment. So Camille decided that she would get home on her own. Soon the girl was already in the apartment, where she immediately rushed into the bathroom. She wanted to wash herself off with the touch of Stephen's hands. Camille rubbed her body with exasperation, silent. Then Camille sank to the bottom of the tub and sobbed bitterly. The next day, Camille asked the director of the flower pavilion for a day off. The girl told the supervisor that she felt disgusting. The supervisor advised her to call a doctor and said she would work by herself for a few days, while Camille is not feeling well. The girl has been manifesting at home for several days. She did not answer her neighbors' calls, and also the cleaner of the orphanage. Camille just wanted to be at home for a while and hoped that she would succeed. However, Evelyn thought quite differently, who was concerned that the ward was not answering her calls, and the elderly woman initially went to the girl's workplace, and after finding out why Camille was absent from the pavilion, she had already gone to her home. The elderly woman rang the doorbell for a long time, and then, realizing she wouldn't get that one opened, said loudly, "I know you're home. If you don't open the door, I'll break it down. And you know very well that I will. Camille, knowing the temper of the cleaning lady, I realized that Evelyn would do as the girl said, opened the door and saw the worried face, the elderly woman. Camille smiled tiredly and invited the guest to pass. Evelyn looked at the wards and sternly asked what had happened. Camille did not want to tell the cleaning lady anything, and so she lied to her that she had quarreled with a young man. The guests looked at the girl with amazement and muttered, "That's the guy you're killing for. The one you just met. I don't understand you. Did you fall in love so quickly? Let's go to the kitchen and have a cup of tea, and you can tell me all about it." Camille realized that Evelyn would have to lie, so she quickly made up stories. She told the elderly woman that she had quarreled with the young man because he had forbidden her to work. The guest, hearing the explanation, only laughed and remained silent. "That's a silly reason for a quarrel. You should have told your boyfriend that you need something to live on. And if he's going to support you, let him do it. I'm not gonna tell him anything. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Maybe I could have a mother-son talk with him. No way. Better tell me how things are going at the orphanage." The landlady spoke, trying to distract Evelyn from the dangerous topic. Time moved slowly. Camille went to work and then went straight home. Stephen did not appear in her life. What was the girl glad of? She wanted to cut this man out of her life completely and never think of him. So Camille got up in the morning as usual. She had to go to work. As Camille felt sick, she rushed to the restroom, where she immediately threw up. The girl was puzzled as to what had happened to her, but immediately she tried to put all thoughts about her health aside as she had to get ready for work. Camille hoped that the nausea would go away during the day, but it did not. The young woman came home irritated after a day of work. She was depressed about her own physical condition and did not even eat dinner that day. She went to bed early. The next day, the same thing happened again. The girl felt nauseous all the time. After work, she went to the store to buy milk, which she loved very much and allowed herself to buy on rare occasions. Camille went to the counter and wanted to take a bottle. She realized that if she took even a sip of milk, she would immediately vomit. Camille did not buy anything and went home. When she got home, the girl sat down on the bed. The doorbell rang. Camille opened it and saw a neighbor who was holding fried pies on a plate. The woman unceremoniously entered the apartment and spoke. "I want to treat you to some baked goods. I happened to buy fuel milk today." "Oh, don't even remind me of milk. It makes me sick at one word," said the girl, looking at her saliva. "I don't understand you. You've always loved milk, and now you're sick of it. I've been sick of it since yesterday. I thought it would go away today, but it didn't. How's your stool?" "It's fine. I'm walking. It's not poisoning. You know, sweetheart, all your symptoms indicate that you're pregnant. I have a pretty good idea who the father of this baby is. I've seen your young man out the window a few times with you, only now he's gone missing. If I were you, I'd go to the drugstore and get a test. I'm not a gynecologist, but trust me, you're definitely in the right place. Don't be silly. I won't drink tea because I'm tired at work. I'm sleepy." With a slightly noticeable irritation, muttered the landlady of the apartment, who at this minute wanted Wendy to go to her room. The neighbor, hearing that she was being beaten about missing, resentfully pressed her lips together and quickly left. As soon as the woman left the apartment, Camille began to pack quickly. She only wanted to buy a pregnancy test after Wendy's words. The girl was able to allow the thought that she could have gotten pregnant by the rascal. Camille bought the test and persevered with the appropriate procedure. The girl was very worried. She absolutely did not want to give birth to a child from Stephen, who had done such a thing to her. When the test showed positive results, Camille squatted down and cried desperately. The young woman did not know what to do in this situation. The first thing that came to mind was to talk to Evelyn and tell her everything honestly. Camille received a call from the cleaning lady and asked her to come to visit her tomorrow. The elderly woman readily agreed and asked what to take for tea. Camille replied that there was no need to bring any guests since she had Krieger. Evelyn wanted to ask her mentee something else, but she said that the whole conversation would take place tomorrow. The next day in the evening, the old woman was already sitting at Camille's house. The landlady, with her head down, told how she had visited Stephen and how it had all ended. Evelyn listened attentively to Camille and asked what she was going to do. Camille tearfully said she wanted to terminate the pregnancy. When the guest heard this, she said softly, "And you are sure of your decision?" Very often it happens that after such procedures, women can no longer have children. But we have modern medicine, and I have nothing to fear. Just understand, if I give birth to this child, this baby will remind me all the time what he did. I am afraid that I hate this child. I'm also afraid that the child will inherit the father's genes and be just as much of a rascal in life. Wait, this is where it all comes together. Is that too much to be afraid of? Let me get this straight. What about medicine? You know, there's a saying that goes, there's a silver lining. That's the case with you. Let's move on. That the child will resemble his father, but it won't. As soon as you put the baby to the breast to feed, you'll realize that this baby is yours alone. Now, about genes. What do genes have to do with it? You're gonna raise the baby. What you put into it is what you'll reap. I'm not in any way trying to talk you into keeping the baby. I'm just trying to make you realize that you have to make these decisions consciously, not in haste, when emotions are running high. And that's what you're going through right now. My advice to you is to go to a gynecologist and make sure that you are pregnant, since tests can also give wrong results. If the pregnancy is confirmed, then check with the doctor until what term you can think about whether to keep the baby or not. And only after that, make a decision. After a while, Camille had already been to the women's clinic and knew for sure that she was in an interesting position. The young woman had contradictory feelings. On the one hand, she was pleased that life had begun inside her. But on the other hand, when she thought of Stephen, she felt disgusted with the child. Camille procrastinated for a long time and then made the choice that she would give birth to this baby, and it would be a joy in her life. The young woman was informed about her decision by the orphanage worker, who was happy to hear the news and immediately said that she would give the stroller as a gift as a grandmother. After Evelyn learned that the ward would give birth, she came to visit her and from the threshold said that it was necessary to have a serious talk. Camille was surprised at this and invited the elderly woman into the guest room and sat down and looked at the landlady carefully and only then spoke. Having a baby is good, but you need to think about the financial side. You have to persuade your manager to make you an official salesperson. That way you'll get an allowance. And if she refuses, find a way to get the director of the flower pavilion to agree. You'll need that money to live on in the future. You know, I don't just give advice. After all, I've lived most of my life already. And please don't put off this conversation with your supervisor until later. Camille, after this conversation with Evelyn, turned to her supervisor. Jenna promised to think about it. And now a month has passed since that conversation, and the supervisor has remained silent on the subject. Camille again talked to her supervisor about official employment. Jenna promised that she would do it in a week. However, a month passed, but the supervisor did not lift a finger on the matter. And when Camille tried to talk about it again, the supervisor pointed to the young woman's slightly bulging belly and said, "Do you want me to pay you benefits? But that's not going to happen. Why would I transfer my money to nowhere?" You don't say. What do you mean, nowhere? This money will be a great help to us. As soon as the baby's old enough, I'm going back to work for you. My answer to you: no, you work one more week and then I'm firing you. You're a good girl. Yeah, she's helping the unmarried. And I'm not going to. Camille was stunned by Jenna's answer. Camille seemed to have developed a good relationship with her supervisor. After all, when the supervisor asked to stay longer after the workday, the girl willingly complied with her request. And now that Camille had been refused, She was extremely offended that she had received such a reward for all her hard work. Camille recounted this conversation with the director of Evelyn's Flower Pavilion. The elderly woman was outraged after hearing the news. She wanted to go and talk to Jenna herself and tell the manager that she was acting illegally. That's one thing. And secondly, decent people don't do that. Camille talked the old lady out of it. She said, "You won't get anything out of it. I worked unofficially, and that says it all. It's my own fault for not having thought of this earlier, to formalize an employment contract." Soon Camille was out of work. The young woman was handed as she realized that the salary she received after she stopped working in the Flower Pavilion would not be enough for a long time. So Camille began to pound various structures in order to find some kind of work before the payment of maternity benefits. However, she was denied everywhere, and seeing that she is in an interesting position, and still the young woman found a job. True, it paid a pittance. The girl had to hand out advertising booklets on the street. Camille realized that she earns a pittance here, but at the moment she was happy about it. Time flew by, and now the young woman gave birth to a baby girl, whom she named Vanessa. Camille fondly felt the little bundle and mentally thanked the cleaning lady, who had made her realize that the decision should be made without any violent thoughts. Camille realized that it was only thanks to that conversation with the technician that she had kept the baby under her heart. And now that baby was born from the maternity ward. Camille was greeted by Evelyn. The elderly woman accepted the small package from the nurse's hands and suddenly cried. Camille was puzzled why the cleaning lady was crying now and asked her about it. "You should be happy. Are you crying? Why? I'm glad you made the right decision at the right time. And now I answer to my granddaughter." Time has slowly moved on. Camille enjoyed learning the role of a mother. She was busy practicing with her daughter. All the motherly duties she lovingly performed. And even when Vanessa switched from day to night, it didn't work for the young woman to have to adjust to a child. It had been a month since Camille had become a mom. And at this point, Camille clearly realized that the allowance was completely inadequate for living. Her daughter needed to buy formula, which cost a lot of money, and she also had to buy shipping, oils, baby soap, and other baby products for the baby. The young woman was at a loss, and it was the first time she had not paid her utility bill. Another 2 months passed. Camille lost weight during this time, as she denied herself food, only to be fed. Camille's daughter helped Evelyn, but only in small amounts. The elderly woman saw perfectly well how difficult it was for her ward, and one day a conversation took place between the cleaning lady and Camille. Camille said to the technician in despair, "I don't know what to do. I was already thinking of putting my daughter in an orphanage for a while and visiting her there. And as soon as she's a little older, I'll take her out of there and get a job in the meantime. That's the stupidest decision I've ever heard. If you do that, you'll lose Vanessa forever. You'd have to give up your parental rights if you did that. Do you even think about what you're saying? I don't know how to make ends meet." With tears in her eyes, said the girl, and immediately added, "Other children at this age have cribs. My daughter still sleeps in the stroller you gave us. The crib is not the most important thing. I'll try to give you a little more money. I don't feel comfortable accepting finances from you anymore. I don't know when I'll be able to pay you back. I'd like to get a job, and then everything will change." After this conversation, about 2 weeks passed, and Evelyn came to visit Camille. The old woman went into the kitchen and put a box with a long cake on the table. The landlady looked at her guest with bewilderment and asked what kind of celebration. The cleaning lady smiled and said, "Celebrating my dismissal from work. I've become too old to carry big buckets of water, and now I've decided to retire. And the salary at the orphanage is tiny. I'll be with Vanessa from now on. And you're trying to get a job, but you still need to help your son. I haven't forgotten about that. They'll cut back on their rations. There's no other option. Although there is one other option, which is to go to the father, establish paternity with DNA, and then demand child support from him. Don't ever say that to me again. I'll never go to what? This is my child and mine alone. Consider me. Vanessa started from the wind in the field with a challenge, exclaimed Camille. You see, so there's only one way out. I sit busy and you look for a job. Did I like the way you stood up to Stephen just now? Evelyn said with a smile. A few days later, Camille got a job as a salesman in a small market not far from home. The young woman was attracted by the fact that the market had a convenient schedule. It was necessary to come to 7 o'clock, and the Labor Day ended at 14:00. The only thing that marred the girl was not particularly high wages, about which she told Evelyn. The old woman said in response that she found something to be upset about. Your salary is higher than the one I received when I worked in the orphanage. Soon Camille went to work. She was a little uneasy, as she had never worked with weighty goods. However, her employer explained everything in detail and spent the day with her, helping the girl to cope with selling vegetables. And so already Camille worked for 3 days at the market. Here the girl met her neighbor Molly, who was selling fruit. The women talked to each other, and Molly in one of the conversations unexpectedly dropped that Camille had hired an employer for nothing. The woman looked at her interlocutor with surprise and asked her why she had said that. Molly embarrassed Cashin, and then, waving her hand, spoke out. And what will I hide it from you? All the same, after all, the truth will tell you others. The thing is that your boss Nancy very often changed salespeople. Regular customers will tell you that soon enough. I've had a couple of people tell me that there's a new salesperson again, but I didn't pay much attention to it. And why Nancy and the salesman do not linger. The answer is simple, constant shortages. At Sveta's, the longest that the sellers have worked is 4 months, as far as I remember. A few days after this conversation, there was an unpleasant incident at Camille's workplace. Toward the end of the workday, as usual, Nancy and her husband arrived to pick up the proceeds. Camille counted out the money and held it out to the supervisor, who looked at the financials and grudgingly said that the amount was too small. Camille narrowed her eyes and replied that they had overpriced vegetables, and customers often left for competitors. Nancy, hearing this, said that one should be able to interest the person who approached the goods and not rely on high prices. The businesswoman then approached the vegetables and inspected them meticulously. Nancy then saw some affected tomatoes. She took out the tomatoes and placed them in front of Camille. The woman looked at the woman perplexed and said quietly, "Vegetables have a way of spoiling. It's not my fault. I agree with you on that. But spoiled goods should be weighed and recorded and kept separately. But I did. I just didn't have time to put these tomatoes aside," Camille said, and quickly took out a notebook in which she wrote down the spoiled vegetables. The girl held out her notes to Nancy. The businesswoman took a quick look at the notebook and spoke in a stern voice. "All this will be deducted from your wages. And now these tomatoes can be taken to your home. How's that? And yesterday's game was cucumbers. I gave them to you. Are you going to take them out of my paycheck too? But that's not fair." Almost crying, said the girl. "It's not for me to teach you how to work with goods. You did not rush to me, so you should do your job. If you see that you have a spoilage of this or that kind of vegetables, you try to block it. From this day on, you are responsible for all spoiled tomatoes, cucumbers, and so on." Camille was walking home after a day's work in high spirits. As soon as she entered the apartment, Evelyn approached her and raised her index finger to her lips. That meant it was worth talking in a whisper. It meant it was worth talking in whispers since Vanessa was asleep. The old woman, seeing Camille in a bad mood, immediately realized that the girl was in trouble. She asked Camille to go to the kitchen and asked her what was wrong. The girl took out the tomatoes and put them on the table. And only then she told what had happened. And at the end of her narrative, she added, "I don't know how to weigh people. I am ashamed to do it. I will not hide that I add a few grams somewhere. I was advised to do so by a neighbor who sells nearby. But how can I answer the customers if I have a kilogram of tomatoes, for example, will rot? Do not be upset. From work a month and see what salary you get. If it will be pennies, then there's nothing to stay there. A month went by and an audit was done. Nancy informed Camille that there was a shortage and told her the amount. The girl was already ready for it, so without too many questions, the businesswoman offered to deduct the shortage. Then she informed Nancy that she was no longer working for her. The next day, Camille again went to look for work at the market where she worked. The girl did not want to go, and that was one reason not to go out with Nancy. Camille decided that it was possible to find a position as a vendor at the bazaar, which was a few stops away from her home. The girl remembered Evelyn's advice, and so she wanted to get a job selling piece goods. Camille was lucky right away. She saw several advertisements at the entrance to the market for sellers. Camille approached one employer, and he said he would be happy to hire her. The girl immediately asked about the salary, and the man voiced the amount. Camille has been drinking since morning, looked at the entrepreneur, and said that this is paltry money. The employer smirked and said, "I do not know you, my dear, so there will be a trial period. If we work out, well, in the sense that there will be no shortages, then in a couple of months your salary will increase. That's what all the entrepreneurs do around here. Maybe you should check it out." The girl sighed dejectedly and agreed to the man's proposal. And then she went on to look at the other sellers' merchandise. It was only when Camille walked a little farther away that she was stopped by a woman who was selling toys. The stranger spoke up. "I heard that you are tuning up for work. Well, I can tell you that all these entrepreneurs promise to raise wages after a while, but not all of them keep their promises. Are you saying that the man I hired will cheat me too? I don't know anything about him. I'm talking about me. I've been working here for about 4 months now, and I've had no complaints. And I was promised a raise. They're still giving me a raise. I'm out of options, so I'm going to have to take my chances and work for this man." Camille left the market after talking to the saleswoman and went to the bus stop. The girl felt disappointed that things were going wrong for her. She thought she would find a job where she would get a great salary, but everything turned out to be exactly the opposite. Soon the bus pulled up. The girl entered the transportation and sat down on the empty seats, but 2 girls were already sitting against her and talking animatedly. Camille, to distract herself from bitter thoughts, involuntarily began to listen to the dialogue of strangers. Initially, Camille realized that they were 2 former classmates who had met after a while and were discussing their peers who were in the same class. Soon Camille got tired of listening to the girls and wanted to turn her attention to the view from the window. So she heard what the brunette said, addressing her interlocutor. "Do you remember Miranda from our class, who always wore her older sister's clothes? We used to make fun of her for it all the time. You wouldn't believe it. I saw her the other day at the coffee shop where I was sitting with my son. I was stunned at how Katya looked originally. I didn't even believe it was her. I called out her name. Miranda smiled at me and moved to the table next to me. I stared at her with my mouth hanging open. It was a luxurious girl, which is immediately obvious that she visits expensive beauty salons. About the way she is dressed, I'm not talking at all. She has fashionable pants, a suit of such a coastal color, and in that to it in sandals. Practically on all fingers descendants and a gold ring. If in general to say, then in front of me was a stylish girl who knows her own price. Katya, whom we knew as the poorest in school. Probably married well, replied the person I was talking to. But you are wrong. She is not married, and is not even in a hurry. Then how did she succeed in life? The second girl asked, perplexed. This was curious for me too, and I asked her about it. Miranda answered that she earns money with her body. She said it so simply that I was very sweet of her answer. I asked her if doing it for money is disgusting. The answer was simple. Miranda said that now she can afford what she wants to do. And as for whether it is disgusting or not, she said that she treats it like a job. I was taken aback by this news. I don't even have the words to describe it. And further, Camille did not hear what the brunette said in response, because after the lecturer announced Camille's stop, the girl got off the bus and went home. thinking about the conversation between the two former classmates. Just then, the young woman saw a bench and sat down on it. She thought about this Miranda who earns money this way. Camille sat for a while as a call came from her neighbor. Wendy reported that Evelyn had become ill and had been rushed to the hospital. Then the neighbor added that Vanessa was at her place. Camille rose abruptly from the bench and ran home. The young woman immediately went to her, where she learned that Evelyn suddenly felt pain in her chest and called Wendy. She in turn called an ambulance, and the older woman was hospitalized. Camille was frightened. She was worried about the pensioner's condition. Camille called the hospital to find out how Evelyn was doing, but I answered that the woman was now in intensive care and all answers would not be available until the next day. Camille slumped down in her chair after the call. She already realized that tomorrow she would not go to any work because Vanessa had no one to leave her with. And also the girl realized that the pensioner would need medicine, which means that she would need finances. All these thoughts made the young woman cry. She was well aware that there was nowhere to go for help at the moment. The next day, Camille put her daughter in the stroller and went to the hospital. Camille mentally asked the Almighty to make Evelyn feel better. The girl was very afraid of losing her dear person. And here it was not that the old woman helped financially, but in another way, that the pensioner supported Camille morally and did not let her be discouraged. Soon Camille was already sitting in the hospital room opposite Evelyn, who had already been brought back from intensive care. The girl stroked the elderly woman's hand and asked her to hold on. The pensioner smiled at the ward and replied, "To me, don't worry, I made it through. But how will you be now?" "Alone, we are slowly leaving. I have an idea. Let's call your son to come here. It would be nice for you to see him. You're going about it the wrong way, sweetheart. I'm not going to die, so let your son come here when he gets a chance. And if you're implying that you're asking him for financial help, forget it. My son is having a hard time too. He's paying a mortgage, and he has 3 kids to feed, clothe, and shoe. All right, calm down. I didn't mean to ask him for help. I just thought it would do you good to see your son and get you back on your feet. The turkey thought I was screwed too," he said sternly. And the woman. And then she said more softly, "All right, I knew you meant what you said out of the goodness of your heart. You'd better tell me that your job is going great. They said you'd be out in a week. So you have exactly 1 week to rest and get back into action," said Camille Savrasov. Having worked soon, Camille returned home with her daughter after the hospital. The young woman played with Utah for a while and then fed her and put her to bed. Afterward, she sat down on the couch and thought about her deception about Evelyn's job. Camille suddenly realized that she had not just told a lie to the older woman. It had been done intentionally. Camille had made the decision even then that she would go to the track to earn money. The realization that she would be selling her body no longer frightened the girl. Camille realized that she simply had no way out. It would be possible to go to work as a salesman, but the young woman already knew that she lacked the so-called salesmanship. This meant that Camille would have to pay for shortages or damaged goods. You could also work as a dishwasher, but it paid a pittance, and the other girl was not given, as there was no appropriate education. And so Camille decided to go to the highway. After a while, Evelyn was discharged from the hospital. The pensioner was taken away by Camille and her daughter. The girl fondly hugged the old woman and said that she would not allow her to be sick anymore. Evelyn smiled at her ward's words and promised. Evelyn smiled at her mentee's words and promised not to do it at all. A few more days passed after the discharge of the pensioner. Camille informed the elderly woman that she was going to work tomorrow. Evelyn asked the girl what her job was. Camille thought for a while and replied, "How can I put it to you so you understand? Basically, I have to go around the world. Basically, I have to go to businesses and collect signatures. Why collect them? I won't tell you yet, because it's gonna be a rotating assignment every few days. But the upside is that I'll be paid by the number of signatures, which means as soon as I complete the assignment, We'll have the money. That's a weird job. It's the first time I've heard of such a job, the older woman said, perplexed. There's nothing strange about it. We are not living in the Stone Age after all. There are many specialties now that you have never even heard of. I'm not going to argue with you. You'd better tell me everything after the first day of work. So Camille is getting ready for work. Evelyn is puzzled and asks the mentees why the working day starts so late, and the time was around 15 o'clock. Camille quickly finds an answer and says that at this time, people are better in contact, and therefore the opportunity to collect more signatures increases. And then the girl added that this way she could earn more money. After a while, Camille stood on the highway. She, so that the pensioner did not guess anything, bought a mini skirt and a blouse with a deep neckline in advance. In all these clothes, the girl changed before going out on the highway. And here already Camille stands on the road and waits for the truck. Initially, cars stopped in front of her, and the drivers offered Camille a ride. However, the girl immediately decided that she needed chauffeurs who work as truckers. She herself did not understand why this decision came to her mind, and soon a truck slowed down in front of Camille. A man's head peeked out of the cab. The driver evaluated the girl and offered her a ride. Camille smiled and got into the driver's cab. The man once again looked at her traveling companion and said, "You must be new here, because I haven't seen you here before. And you? I see that you are already a regular here, if you know everyone," said the girl, trying to say so that her voice did not shake from excitement. However, the man as if caught her inner state, and so he asked, "You are obviously going to do this case for the first time. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I know the rates, and I will pay even a little more than what is required." After a while, Camille was already out of the cab. The young woman adjusted her skirt, and at the same moment heard a man shouting to her that she was gorgeous and that he would like to meet her again. The girl reluctantly waved him off and walked slowly down the road. At the moment, Camille felt dirty. She couldn't stand the urge to shower to wash off the stranger's touch. But Camille forced herself to think about the fact that this was just a job that would help her and not live. The young woman came home. Already as before the evening, Evelyn looked anxiously at the ward, but the latter smiled amiably and said that there was the first earnings, and handed the pensioner the money. The old woman looked at the money and frightenedly said, "Wow, a decent amount for one working day. Today was just a lucky day. There was only one task that needed to be done today. So I tried to collect more signatures. I had to visit a lot of different agencies, but it was worth it. I don't like you coming home alone so late. You're a girl who knows what can happen. You better get fewer signatures and come home earlier. You know, there's a popular wisdom that you can't make all the money you want. That goes for you. We'll see. And now we should be happy that we have finances, and we will be able to buy, not a crib, so that the child sleeps not in a stroller. I'm also very tired as I've been walking a lot. So can I take a shower and go to bed?" Evelyn offered the girl to eat first, and then already take hygienic procedures, but Camille refused. The young woman wanted to actually take a shower and just forget about what she had done today of her own free will. As soon as Camille got to the bed and Evelyn, who had stayed with her tonight because Camille had come home late, was lying next to her, she felt ashamed. The landlady turned to the pensioner in a whisper and apologized for the late visit. The guest stroked her ward in response and asked her not to worry about nothing. Only after these words, Evelyn Camille calmly sighed. Immediately, she was struck by an electric shock. She realized that, doing such work, she had not thought about the most important thing, that she could get pregnant. Camille immediately decided that she would buy birth control tomorrow. The next day, Camille didn't go anywhere. What surprised the pensioner? The elderly woman asked why Camille had the day off today. The girl laughed in response and said that she would not have a job every day. Camille could not admit to Evelyn that today she simply did not want to go to the track, as there was still a residue on her soul from the way she had earned the money. It had been 2 days since Camille had given pleasure to the driver of the truck. It was only after that that the young woman decided to go out on the highway again. It was not an easy decision for her, and it was as if felt by Evelyn, who asked the girl where her office with the management was located. Camille realized that if she didn't make a precise schedule of the so-called work, the pensioner would sound the alarm and start to find out everything herself. So Camille decided that from this day forward, she would go out to the track once every 3 days. Camille had already been working in this way for 2 weeks. During that time, the girl bought her daughter a crib. Camille realized that she could not go on like this forever, and she comforted herself with the fact that it was only until her daughter grew up a little. And then the girl planned to give Anya to the kindergarten and herself to enroll in correspondence studies at the institute. And so Camille once again went out on the highway. She was waiting for a truck, and at the same time remembered the movie Pretty Woman. She liked this movie very much. The girl imagined herself in the role of the main character and dreamed that she would one day happen in her life. She wanted to meet a prince on a white horse who will pull her out of the swamp and will love not only her, but also Anya that. However, the young woman understood that this will not happen, as it only happens in movies, where the plot is invented to interest the viewer. And yet the girl still dreamed about it, realizing that it would not happen to her. Reflections, and the girl was interrupted by a stopped car. Camille looked into the car, and from horror, the whole transport belonged to the husband of her neighbor. And this meant that now the man would start asking unnecessary questions about what she was doing on the highway. And in fact, the car door opened, and the neighbor looked out and said in surprise, "Camille, I didn't expect to see you here. What are you doing here?" "My wife told me you got a job." "That's right, Wendy. But it's my day off. And here I am waiting for a young man. Let's just say I have a date. I'll ask you not to tell your spouse about this. She'll be asking me all kinds of questions." "That's right." Laughing, the man said. And then he added, "My Wendy, curious person wants to know everything about everyone. Only that you chose a meeting with your boyfriend in a not very convenient place." "Yeah, I already realized that." As soon as the neighbor left, Camille breathed a sigh of relief. She'd expected a lot more questions from Wendy's husband, and there weren't many. Now the girl was only worried that the neighbor would not tell about their encounter on the road. Camille knew very well that Wendy often met with Evelyn and could tell the elderly woman that Camille was standing on the highway. And if the old woman found out about it, she wouldn't let up until she knew the whole truth. Camille, on the other hand, absolutely did not want Evelyn to know the way she made her money. A few days passed. Camille was once again standing on the highway, waiting for a truck. And then a beautiful black Jeep stopped in front of her. 2 big guys jumped out of the cabin, who picked up the girl under the elbows and quickly pushed her into the car. The young woman did not even have time to shout, as she was already in the Jeep. And here an obese man turned to her from the front seat, who looked at her carefully and then asked her how long she had been doing this. Camille was startled and said she did not know what he was talking about. Her phrase made the stranger angry, and he spoke harshly. "You don't make a pie girl of yourself here. This is my territory. And I have already been informed that there is a young lady who works without taxes. And as it turns out, this young lady is you. So let's be honest. Otherwise, my boys are gonna have a different conversation with you." Camille, looking at the stranger, clearly realized that it was not worth lying to this man, because he would keep his word. The girl admitted that she had been out on the track for a little less than a month, and immediately added that she didn't do it every day. Hearing the young woman's retort, the man nodded contentedly. Then he said softly, "My name is Sam. Now I see that you're telling the truth, and you're a good girl, because you figured it out the first time. Now listen to what I have to say. You work on my territory, which means I have to pay tax to the treasury, like any decent citizen. But the treasury for you will not be the state, but my pocket. And in general, on the 1st of every month, you will bring me a sum of money to my address. If you don't, you realize you'll be dealing with my boys sitting next to you. Now tell me what you got." "I've got you scared," the girl muttered fearfully. "That's great. It's a pleasure doing business with you," said the man and handed Camille a piece of paper on which was written an address and a sum of money. Camille looked at the entry and the window, and then said, But this is a large sum. It's almost half of what I'll earn in a month, and who has an easy life these days? You see, I'm not an unemployment fund. I want to eat good food too. And if you don't like this amount, go work at the factory as a laborer. I didn't force you to go to the highway, so you decide what's good for you. Anyway, this is a short conversation. Either you pay or you're out of here. And I'm waiting for your decision right now." "Okay, I'll do it." After that, the young woman was allowed out of the car. And as soon as Camille left the car, the Jeep drove off. Camille looked after the car and tears rolled down her cheeks. She realized that from now on, she would have to pay back almost half of the money she had earned. After this conversation, the young woman decided that today she would not work. After a while, the girl was already at home. She entered the apartment and saw the surprised face of the pensioner, who asked why she did not come so early. Camille glumly replied that the day had not gone well and there were no errands to run. Evelyn looked at the girl carefully and said sternly, "Don't tell me fairy tales here. Tell me what really happened. I've known you for years, and I can see that you're worried." Camille was about to tell me the truth about where and how she made her money. But then she looked at Evelyn. She felt ashamed to tell the old woman. The girl collected the pensioner again and wrote tall tales that she had not been paid for her assignment today. Evelyn, inquisitive, looked at the interlocutor and helped. "I hope you are not deceiving me. And about the fact that they paid, I understand that it's frustrating. But you can't be too upset about it. Every job has a slip-up. You had one. All right, calm down. Come on, I'll feed you and tell you how we fought the duck today." After Evelyn's words, the girl sighed with relief that the conversation on a dangerous topic was over. And then together with the pensioner went to the kitchen, where she listened to the elderly woman, who enthusiastically told how she spent the day sonnets. The next day, Camille felt ill. She had a fever and a sore throat. Camille realized she had a cold. The young woman wrote about herself as she realized that it was impossible to be sicker now. After all, it was urgent to earn money to pay tribute to the track. Soon, Evelyn arrived at Camille's house and immediately announced that the labor activity would cease for the time being. Camille, as soon as she heard this with a sad smile, said that these were the words she had expected from Evelyn. In response, she said, "Don't think I'm such a predictable madam. I'll call a doctor and persuade the doctor to put you in the hospital. You don't have to do that. You're a doctor, so treat me with us agreed, but only sick. You will follow all my instructions." With a smile, said Evelyn, specifically addressing Daddy's ward. Camille recovered. 7 days later, she wanted to go to work again, but she was prevented from doing so by a pensioner. The elderly woman said that Camille had not yet recovered from her illness and needed to stay at home for a couple more days. There was nothing left for the girl to do, only to agree with Evelyn's decision. 2 days later, Camille was already standing on the highway. She was thinking about how to raise the necessary amount for Wendy. The young woman realized that she was not ready to go to work every day, but she also realized that it was necessary to give the money. And then one solution came to her mind, that one day it was necessary to double the number of clients, and only she thought about it as a truck stopped in front of her. The girl climbed into the cab and closed the door and then turned to the driver. Immediately, with fear, she faintly shuddered. In front of her sat the man who had robbed her of her innocence. The young woman only wanted to get out of the car. As the young man menacingly ordered her not to move from her seat, and in doing so grabbed her arm, Camille expelled and asked Stephen to let her go. The guy grinned and said that she had willingly got into the vehicle, and then added that you were a pious lady offering your services on the highway. And at that time, you did not make a road out of yourself. Well, let's see what you have managed to learn during this time. I can't wait to reminisce with an old acquaintance who picked up during this time of experience. They're gonna let me out of the car. And don't even think that I'm going to have fun with you, and you shouldn't shame me, since it's only to your credit that I'm out here on the highway making a living. You're the one who took my virginity against my will, and I got pregnant afterward. I have a young daughter who needs food, diapers, skates, etc., and my allowance isn't very high. And you knew I was an orphanage kid with no one to stand up for me. So you used your power that day. I hate you. Are you telling me you had my baby? That's an unexpected twist. Don't tell me you want to get child support from me now. You make money on the highway. Somebody got you pregnant, Stephen said defiantly. Even though you're the biological father of the child, I can assure you that we don't need your money. You can choke on your finances, and the fact that you have a daughter you can forget forever. And let's stop this stupid conversation. There's only one thing I don't understand right now. I mean, you're such a big shot. And you work as a trucker. That doesn't make sense. Okay, I don't want to waste my time with you. Let me get out of the car. I can't take care of myself. Camille tried to open the door of the truck, but she was pulled to her by Stephen Force and tried to lift her skirt. The girl screamed in desperation and began to fight back. At that moment, a voice came from behind them. It was a man speaking to the driver. Let her go right now. What are you doing? Partner, you know I like to have fun with the girls on the road, Stephen said in a perplexed voice. You'll find another girl on the way, the man replied. Christopher, you're my partner, but in this case I don't understand you, said Stephen, and let the girl go. In the meantime, Camille glanced back and looked at the protector. He was a handsome middle-aged man who looked her straight in the eye. The girl nodded gratefully and started to open the door of the truck, but she was called by her partner Stephen. The young woman looked back and glanced questioningly at the man. At that moment, he took out a purse and took out some bills, which he immediately handed to Camille with the words, "This is enough for you and the little girl for the first time, and try to change your trade. It doesn't suit you. You'd better find another way to make money. Now go home to your daughter, who's sure to miss you." But I can't take the money. Just like that, Camille said. You can. Take it and go. If I see you on the road again, they'll think you're a fallen woman, Christopher said sternly. The young woman took the money and nodded gratefully once more and quickly got out of the car. As soon as the young woman left the cab, the truck started at the same moment. Camille looked at the car and thought about the stranger's words. Camille stood for a while longer and then headed home. The girl thought that there was only one trouble for today. It was the meeting with Stephen, but she was wrong. Camille had just arrived home, so she saw that her neighbor was visiting. Camille said hello to her, but she said nothing and hurried away to her room. The girl looked at her neighbor with a puzzled look. Then she turned to Evelyn. What's the matter with Wendy? I came in and she just ran off. She didn't even say hello, and I thought we'd had no quarrel with her. The pensioner didn't say a word in response. The old woman asked if she had earned it today. Camille girl with a smile replied that she received a good sum for work, and with these words began to take out her purse to show her finances. Camille took out the money and handed it to Evelyn with words, "Here, take at least part of it. I suggest that tomorrow we go to the market together and buy some goodies. How about it?" The pensioner approached the girl and took the money. The old woman studied the bills for a long time and then asked her mockingly what was Camille's task today. Camille immediately sensed a trick in Evelyn's question. She answered that today she was collecting signatures for the advertisement. The old woman laughed and then with a sharp movement threw the money in the face of her ward with the words, "Who did you decide to deceive?" And after this phrase, the pensioner snatched from Camille's hands a bag from which to shake out the clothes. Evelyn picked up the fallen short skirt from the floor, as well as a blouse with a deep neckline. The older woman held out the clothes to the girl and said reproachfully, "This is your uniform. When you collect signatures from truckers, Don't give me any more fairy tales. Wendy saw you today, driving down the highway with her husband. A neighbor told me you were wearing those clothes when you got into the truck. She also told me that her husband had seen you on the road before. By the way, he's been getting the same shit from you. That you were on a date. How could you do something like that? Tell me, don't you hate what you're doing? Can you imagine what your daughter will think of you when she finds out? I'm ashamed of what you're doing right now. It's like you stabbed me in the back. I didn't expect you to deceive me like that. You. Evelyn shoved things into Camille's hands. Camille and silently went to the kitchen, where she sat down at the table, and not in a coffin, and cried softly. Camille came in after her and tried to hug the older woman, but the latter pushed her away. The girl realized that she had caused her dear one unbearable heartache. She wanted to say something in her defense, but there were no words. Camille knelt down in front of Evelyn and spoke loudly. It's my fault, and I admit it. I know I have offended you very much, and I have nothing to say for myself. Believe me, I did not go to the track for my own pleasure, but only to survive. Just don't pretend you're poor. There are plenty of single moms who find a way to make ends meet, and they don't go selling their bodies. Like you did, scold me with tears in my eyes directly killed Camille. I won't tell you anything else. I'll just leave now and try to forget that I ever met you. Small pennies. I'll pay you back, but we won't see each other anymore. And you can continue to go out for signatures on the highway, said the old woman and got up from the table. She wanted to take a step, but could not, for her knees were encompassed by Camille, who cried, sobbing profusely. For a few minutes the girl held Evelyn by the legs and then raised her face to the pensioner, and through her sobs said, "You may scold me with hurtful words. I bear it all. Just don't cut us out of your life. I promise you, on my knees, that I will never go out on the highway again. I don't know how I'll make a living yet, but believe me, I'll find a way. Just give me one chance. I beg you not to turn your back on us. You know very well that you're the only person we have close to us. I've only now realized what I can't lose. Believe me, I'm truly sorry for what I did, but I did not know how to get out of such a situation when there is no money, sometimes even for bread. I just ask you to believe that the money I brought today, it was not earned in this way. It was given to me by a stranger who saved me from Stephen. And that man gave me a good admonition too, that if he ever sees me on the highway again, he will consider me a fallen woman. He said the right words to you. All right, baby, if you promise me it won't happen again, we'll stick together. We'll try to forget this month completely, like it never happened. Now go see your daughter. I think she's awake," quietly spoke the old woman and stroked the girl's head. In the evening of that day, when the Evelyn players had already left, Camille thought about life. She realized that she had made a promise to the pensioner, and the girl knew that she would keep her word in any case, even if she had to starve. And at the moment, Camille was concerned with another question: where to find a part-time job. Camille spent a long time in her thoughts, and when she looked at the clock, she was surprised that already at 0:00 the young woman came to her daughter and admired the baby. Then the girl shared the bed and lay down. And at that moment, for some reason, she remembered the departure of her neighbor. Now Camille understood why Wendy had treated her so dryly. Camille decided that she had to talk to the neighbor tomorrow. 10 days passed. Camille kept her promise to Evelyn. Now when the pensioner came to Camille, the girl went to look for a job. And soon she was lucky to get a job as a dishwasher in a kindergarten. The salary was small, but Camille was happy with the money, and the schedule suited her. Another week flew by and Camille had a day off. The young woman decided to take her child for a walk at lunchtime. She had already started to get things to dress. The doorbell rang. Camille was surprised by it, as she was not expecting anyone, and especially Evelyn knew that she had a day off today and did not come these days. The girl then thought that was right. A neighbor came over to chat and hurriedly opened the door. However, it was not Wendy who turned out to be the evening, but a stranger who held a gorgeous bouquet of pink roses and a large fluffy bear. Camille looked at the man with surprise and immediately recognized him as the man who had given her money for nothing. The landlady was embarrassed to see Stephen's partner and spoke crumpled. "Hello, you must be here for the debt. How did you find me? You have a way of keeping guests on the doorstep. I'm glad you remembered me, though. That means you left a good impression of me. I'm not used to letting strangers into my home." "Oh my goodness," the man exclaimed, and then went on. "We're the ones who don't know each other. Perhaps you don't remember my name, but I remember yours perfectly well because I heard your whole conversation with Stephen. Only after I heard what that man did to you that I did not let him do it again. My name is Christopher, by the way. I remember Stephen calling you Christopher. All right, come on in, but I'm warning you right away, I don't have the money to pay you back at the moment. And one more thing, I don't do that trade anymore. If you'd like to collect your debt in this equivalent, I gave the money freely and from the bottom of my heart. I really wanted you to stop doing this business," said the man and handed the girl flowers and a toy, and then crossed the threshold. "But I don't understand why you came to me," the young woman asked in surprise. "That's an interesting question, but I will answer you now. Initially agree that you will not call me you. Otherwise I feel like an old man. I'm only 31 years old. Now to answer your question. When I saw you in the car, I was struck by your looks. Then I thought you'd disappear and all my thoughts of you would be gone. But as time went on, I kept thinking about you. Then I realized that Cupid's arrow had accidentally pierced my heart, and thus I stand beside you." After these words, the crying of a child was heard from the room. The young woman rushed into the room. She put the flowers and the toy on the bed and picked up her daughter in her arms. Following the mistress of the apartment followed the guest. The man looked at the little girl and softly said, "It seems to me that with a toy I hurried. You should have bought another set of rattles. Since your daughter is still a baby, you shouldn't have bought anything at all. By the way, my daughter's name is Vanessa. She's 5 months old. I forgot to ask you how you found me. Stephen gave me a beautiful name. He gave me the street, the house, the entrance. I had to find the apartment on my own." "Very interesting. Can you tell me why Stephen is a trucker? I mean, his father's not a poor man. I'd be happy to share. He told me why it happened. But first I'd like you to offer me a seat. That's what hospitable hostesses usually do," the man said with a smile. The young woman hummed with embarrassment and offered the guest a chair while she sat down on the bed with the baby. The girl turned to Christopher and looked questioningly at the man. The guest realized that he was expected to answer, and so began his story from the narration of the new acquaintance. The landlady learned that Stephen's father's business had failed and had to take a large loan from the bank to restore his own business. However, the finances did not help. Eventually, the business went bust, and there was a debt to the bank. And then it was decided to sell Stephen's apartment to pay off the debt. The young man's father could not bear it all and died suddenly. Stephen was left without money for life, and he had nothing to pay for his studies at the institute. So the guy dropped out of college and got a job as a trucker. Christopher told all this while looking at Camille, who was listening attentively. When the man finished the story, the girl smiled mysteriously, which did not hide from the guest. And he asked, "You must be gloating." "Not at all. I just think that Stephen will now understand how to live on a simple salary and not boast about daddy's money." "You're right about that. Stephen is the sole earner in the family now, since his mother never worked after marrying his father. And from what I understand, my partner's mom isn't going to do it. But I'm not interested in that anymore." "Me neither. We were gonna go for a walk. Go with the duck. You won't mind that. So you're gonna tell me about yourself." And soon the couple and the baby were walking in the park. Christopher told the girl he lived in a one-room apartment. He has been working as a trucker for 6 years. He likes this occupation, and also said that he was married. But the family life did not work out. He said that he likes to guess Japanese crossword puzzles and dreams of visiting the Northern Territory in the future. Hearing the man's last wish, Camille laughed and said, "Everyone wants to go to the South, but you want to go to the North. You are strange. It's very simple. My parents are from there, and they often talk about it. If only you could hear how enthusiastically my mother and father describe the North. Why am I telling you this now? I'll get to know them. You'll hear it firsthand. What makes you think I'm going to meet them? Wait a minute. Don't be so quick to say no. It's not like I'm asking you to get into bed. I just want to start by courting you. And if everything turns out well, then we can create a family with you in the future." From the lack of the young man, with a laugh uttered Camille. The couple walked with the child for a while, and then Christopher walked the girl home, helped her carry the stroller to the 3rd floor, and at parting asked permission to call and visit. The girl responded to the young man with consent. A month passed as Christopher visited Camille for the first time. During this time, the couple met several times. They often called each other. The man always inquired about Vanessa's accomplishments to the young woman at each call. It was a pleasure. It didn't take long to fly by. Another month, Camille came home from work and was surprised to hear someone in her apartment speaking in a man's voice. She listened and recognized Christopher's voice. The girl went into the room and saw the man talking sweetly with Evelyn. The old woman saw the girl and said with a smile that Camille had come to visit them. Camille looked at Christopher with surprise, and he immediately knelt down on one knee in front of Camille, took out a small box from the pocket of his jeans, which he opened and handed to the girl with the words, "Here I am making you a marriage proposal. I met Evelyn without your permission and told this worthy woman how I love you. She said she would bless us only after you gave your consent. Now my fate is in your hands." Camille looked at Evelyn, confused initially, and then shifted her gaze to the man. The girl took a box from which she pulled out a thin wedding ring. She slipped the piece of jewelry onto her finger and admired it. Taking her hand aside, then looked at Christopher again and asked quietly, "What about my job at the track? That's what you gave me, isn't it? You're going to remind me of that someday, aren't you? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? I believe I met you in a more romantic setting, like the day I first walked into this apartment. Make it look like I got the wrong address. And by the way, Stephen is no longer my partner. I asked management to do that, and they'd gone along with it. Now I have a partner who's not considered for the girls. He's a model family man. That's what I'm going to be. As soon as you say yes, what can I tell you? Naturally, I say I want to be your wife," the girl said happily. And at the same moment she found herself in the arms of a man. Christopher tenderly kissed the young woman and quietly in her ear said, "You have now made me with the happiest person. I love you madly, and I will never hurt you or Anya. I will do everything possible so that you do not need anything. We will be a model family. And now you can't refuse to meet your relatives, who already know about you and are eagerly waiting for me to introduce you to them. I understand that you are preparing me to talk to my father and mother about the wonderful northern region, as well as hinting that we will have a joint trip to those lands. That's a good point. And you are not only beautiful, but also smart." Laughing, Christopher replied, and kissed the young woman on the lips.